Okay. Good evening, everyone. Apologies for the technical difficulties. I think we should be okay now, and thanks for bearing with us. I will call to order this Tuesday, July 21st meeting of the Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission. We'll begin with our meeting minutes. We have two sets to vote on this evening, June 23rd and July 14th. I'll ask for a motion on these items. Commissioner Levy.
As with respect to June 23rd, move to approve with one correction that the vote tally should be 5-0 with 2 abstentions.
Yeah, and that's for, hang on, I just had that up.
23rd.
So, Sargon, if you could just make note that is for 525 Tunxus.
Oh, correct.
It's just a typo.
Yep. I cannot see the room. Are you guys being filmed? Because I can't see anybody.
Yes.
Yeah, Kathy, there's 2 cameras live in the room. One is fire training classroom 111 front and 111 rear.
The tables are in a square configuration, Kathy?
Oh, I have
Can you see that?
I can see it now. I see only myself and Veronica. Okay. I can see a little picture now of you.
You see us now, Kathy?
I haven't changed to the other minutes.
Are you making one motion for both, or are you making separately?
Just
You can make another motion for the other.
Let's do this one first then. Okay, so Commissioner Levy moves to approve the June 23rd minutes with the amendment to correct a typo as indicated. Is there a second? Commissioner Randolph seconds. Anything further?
Nothing further.
Any other commissioner have comments on this? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the June 23rd minutes with the amendment as articulated, please raise your hand or say aye. Oh, I apologize. We are without Commissioner Delgado tonight. I'm sorry, I meant to do this at the start and the move distracted me. So Commissioner Delgado is not with us tonight. Commissioner Zablak is going to be sitting in for him for our couple of voting items. Okay, so I'll just ask that again. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Commissioner Zablak. Okay, thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next is meeting minutes from July 14th. Commissioner Levy.
Yeah, move to approve, other than to add that Commissioner Braun did not participate in the executive session with respect to the Stilson LLC matter.
Thank you. Commissioner Levy moves to approve with an amendment to note that that Commissioner Braun did not participate in the Stilson discussion.
Actually, it should say that I was removed from the room. I don't know a better way of saying that, but
You weren't removed.
I was not present. Remove myself.
Not present.
Was not present.
Commissioner Levy second. I'm sorry, Commissioner Randolph seconds. Anything further?
Nothing further.
Commissioner Braun, did you have additional corrections?
I was just going to say that I was not present for that matter.
Say one. Okay, thank you. Any additional comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the July 14th minutes with the amendment as noted, please raise your hand or say aye.
And the second was Randolph for that?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next, we return to a request to accept offsite below market rate units, a request by Summit Development to accept 4 additional deed restricted units at the approved 18-unit development at 1427 Kings Highway in lieu of 2 on-site units for the condominium development at 250 Pequot Avenue for section 31.7.J.1. I'm sorry, Attorney Russo, good evening.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. Chris Russo with Russo and Rizzo LLC, offices at 10 Sasko Hill Road, Fairfield, here on behalf of the applicant. Come before you tonight as a follow-up regarding previously discussed proposal for 250 Pequot Avenue. As the Commission no doubt recalls, 250 Pequot was approved for 18 residential units. Pursuant to that approval, there are 2 designated affordable units restricted to folks at 80% income with 80% of AMI. We've presented a number of proposals that have been arranged in addressing factors under your regulations to weigh in the decision per units in lieu. So I'm back with another proposal. And I think this proposal by far, with almost all the factors, addresses some of the concerns we discussed. They're also greater than the previous proposals. And I'll go through how they are.
Do you want us to share this?
Sure, yeah, if you want to, I can pull it up too if you need me to.
I'll make you co-host, that way you can.
Yeah, I can get it pulled up here. So while I'm getting that up, the property is 1427 Kings Highway. It's located in the designed commercial district. It's located across Ash Creek Boulevard from Alto. It's basically at the metro station. I'll share here to pull. It was previously approved for 18 dwelling units itself, 2 of which were designated as affordable units similar to 250 Pequot. Those would remain, it's part of the approval, so obviously it has to remain. But we are now proposing 4 additional affordable units on that property, bringing the total to 6 affordable units at 1427 Kings Highway. So 6 of the 18 would be designated as affordable. The units we're talking about, they're units that are all 2 bedrooms and 2 baths. They range, and I could show you a slide here, they range from 905 square feet to 981 square feet. To the next slide there we go. Each unit features a private master bedroom with a master bath attached, as well as a second bedroom and a second full bathroom in the living area. Unit contains open space kitchen, dining, and living area. Each unit also includes an in-unit washer and dryer. Just going through your factors that we've discussed previously on these proposals. The first is, this is the largest increase in units that I've proposed. If you remember, I was before you for property at 21 Ardmore, where we were proposing 3 units in lieu of the 2 units at 250 Pequot. There was another property, 43 Pease Avenue, which was 2 units for 2 at 250 Pequot. So this proposal is 4 units. We're doubling the number of units from 250 Pequot. We're also doubling the number of bedrooms. 8 bedrooms in total that are being restricted affordable at 1427 Kings in lieu of the 4 bedrooms at 250 Pequot. In comparison, 21 Ardmore, there was 2 bedrooms and a 1 bedroom. So for a total of 5 bedrooms with 3 baths in total. And 43 Pease Avenue was 2 bedrooms, each one with a full bath. So in comparison to those 2, these are, it's more units, more bedrooms, more bathrooms than anything that I've been before you on. You may also recall one of the issues that was brought up by some commissioners on our previous submissions has been that the square footage for the units in lieu in total was actually less than the square footage 250 Pequot. So the units at 250 Pequot are a range of 2 bedrooms from 1,650 square feet to 2,150 square feet. There are a couple of units at 250 Pequot that are 2 levels, so that's large. Those 2 are larger than that range, but the bulk of the units at 250 Pequot are in this range. Most of them are actually less than 2,000 square feet. 21 Ardmore, for comparison, was 2,870, and 43 Pease Avenue was 1,746 square feet. So they were less than 250 Pequot. Again, the range here at 1427 is 905 to 981 square feet. So with 4 units, we are essentially matching or exceeding the square footage of the 250 Pequot Ave units. And that's something that's in your regulations, is that the square footage has to be either of similar size or in excess of. So I feel like we are fulfilling that portion of your regulation. The other factor that commissioners had discussed was the quality of the units. So if you remember, on both 21 Ardmore and 43 Pease Avenue, we were proposing extensive renovations to those existing dwellings. But at the end of the day, 250 Pequot is new construction housing, and those were not. 1427 Kings, on the other hand, what we're proposing tonight, that will be new construction. You can see there's some renderings in this slide, and I had submitted this, so I think it's posted online. But you can see a conceptual floor plan there of how it's laid out. So it's new construction. These are going to be very nice, brand new units, and I think it's as close as we can get to the quality of the 250 Pequot Avenue units. It's not a renovation like the prior proposals. Regarding the location, this is obviously not in Southport like 250 Pequot is. However, similar to Pequot Avenue, it has close proximity to a train station. I discussed that for 21 Ardmore. 1427 Kings Highway is even closer. It's right there at the train station for residents to be able to access. And being on Kings Highway, it allows for residents to be in close proximity to a much wider variety of services. You have restaurants, Sally's, Esh, Illicit Brewing are right there. You also have BJ's, you have Whole Foods, you have CVS, you have Home Depot. It really has it all. And I think it's important because it's not just the quality of the units, but also what you have access to. And there's easy access to transportation services, stuff you need for your daily needs at this 1427 Kings Highway. 250 Pequot's obviously a great location, but I do think that this is also a great location that puts you in the heart of a lot of things. The other factor, just looking at HUE points. So if you might recall that 250 Pequot would earn 1 HUE point for each unit, so a total of 2 points. Under the proposal tonight, we're proposing that the 4 affordable rental units are rented to families that income is limited to 60% of AMI. So each of those units would earn 2 HUE points. So it would give you a total of 8 HUE points. So the town would quadruple the points it receives from these 4 affordable units. That's more than any prior proposal I've made. Under your current regulations, you require 12% of units to be designated at 80% AMI. So to get the additional 6 HUE points that you would get with this proposal, you would need a project to construct 34 units under your regulations to get the same number of points that are being proposed with this. And this was something that came up when we were discussing 21 Ardmore and its location and the comparable rents. I know Commissioner Levy, you had brought that up. Looking at the state site, a 2-bedroom rental at 60% AMI has a rent limit at approximately $2,117 a month, according to the state's website. I looked at Creekline Apartments, which I thought was similar to 1427 Kings. I looked at a 2-bedroom, 2-bath that were on Zillow. One was for $3,372 a month. The other was for $3,391 a month. Alto, I looked at Alto as well, but they actually didn't have a 2-bedroom. They just had 1-bedrooms, and they were somewhere in the 3,000s for the 1-bedrooms. So I think it's a considerable difference in terms of rent for these restricted units. So as we've discussed, this regulation is kind of a balancing test. And this proposal exceeds what I proposed on prior proposals. We doubled the number of units from 250. We doubled the number of bedrooms, doubled the number of bathrooms, quadruple the number of HUE points. We're matching and exceeding, if depending on how you take the average of the 250 Pequot Ave units in terms of square footage, which was something we didn't have before. And these would 250 Pequot and 1427 Kings are both new construction housing. So in terms of quality, I think this proposal is far superior than the others. And then again, the difference in the market value. So really all it leaves is the difference really being is the location. And again, I do think that 1427 Kings is a terrific location and has a lot of benefits for the residents who would live here. So with that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
And I'll start with Commissioner Levy, who had his hand up. Mr. Mullen, can you just pull the screen share down just so I can see the commissioners who are joining
I
us?
think I showed the other slide.
Well, we've come a long way.
Yes.
Couple questions, as far as 1427, that's in the permit stage.
So they're hoping to get started September is what I've been told by the developer at that site.
And 260 Pequot, if you believe the sign, will be ready in March of 27.
Yes, and you know, again, the way your regulation is worded, you could not have the restriction removed on 250 Pequot without it being on 1427 and those units being, you know, there's going to be no gap there. Points.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about that. It's just a question of timing. I mean, would the developer consider escrowing, let's say, $2 million until 1427 is completed and the
Can't they not get a CO on the building until?
They can't, yeah, they couldn't do it. Yeah, so I think you're protected that way. Yeah, we definitely have to check with him on whether he could escrow $2 million.
Would be.
I think you're protected by the way the regulations work.
some sort of security in case 1427 doesn't get developed or it's.
Then the restriction would remain with 250 Pequot. And so my client wouldn't be able, if he got a CO on 250 Pequot, he would have to offer the 2 units for sale there.
Harrigan.
And if I could, through you, Mr. Chair, Emmeline Harrigan, Planning Director for the record. They have already started the permitting process and, you know, they've approached the town for example, one of the steps in the process is posting the bond for the project. So they're in that stage where they're starting to do that. So they're on their way.
And just one other thing. I mean, in terms of the sale unit, once those 2 units at 260 were sold, from the developer's perspective, they're gone. He has no further interest in those 2 units. 40 years down the road, whoever owns it will reap whatever benefit. It doesn't revert to the developer. So,
Right.
so in order to make apples apples, I think the 4 units, which you're suggesting would be at 60%,
In perpetuity.
would equally be in perpetuity.
In perpetuity, correct.
And if that was acceptable, you might even get my vote. So.
Commissioner Braun, I saw your hand up first.
So this is just piggybacking on what Commissioner Levy said. So this is a 40-year restriction.
250 is a 40-year restriction. What we're proposing is in perpetuity.
You are, okay.
Yes.
So you're giving us 8 points and the 8 points will be obtained. And could you just restate, we've talked about this 4 times before, I think, but I think we have to state it each time for the record. Your understanding of how 8-30G works in terms of when the points become effective. It's usually when you get a certificate of occupancy, but in this,
Right.
and in this instance, this is new construction.
Right,
So-
right. And that's different than the prior ones because it was a little different because those units are already in existence, but because it's essentially same, it's new construction, the CO would have to be issued for
Okay.
you accumulate the points.
And that's already, construction has already started, so that's different than if you're just starting to plan to apply for something like this. And I was just gonna say that I think that this project down there, this is the Philbin building, I believe, right?
Yeah.
We approved it a year ago, I think. It
Probably
What-
over.
I've read Mr. Bosch's letter. He's very smart. He wrote a very lengthy letter, very good letter, and I hope you'll address it a little bit. But he talks about inclusionary zoning and how we shouldn't put all the affordable, we should have affordable units in Southport. I don't agree with that opinion, because the reason we passed this regulation was to allow people to build ownership multifamily, which requires affordability, and it's almost impossible to do without unit owners subsidizing
You did.
affordable units. So, and this building itself, I believe, kind of makes up for any argument that it's not in a good location. It's in a great location. It's like right next to Wake Up Coffee. It's right next to the train tracks. So that makes it uniquely situated, I think. And it's also a beautiful building. Is there some kind of an arrangement with the developers of 1427 to have 6 affordable as opposed to, they only were required to have 2?
Yeah, so he's paying, they're currently working on the details of that. My client might actually end up partnering into it, so that may be part of his coming into the project. I will say value wise, it's probably gonna end up slightly more than what you've seen in the previous proposals. I'm trying to remember what 21 are. They were like 1.3, 1.4, and it's gonna end up being more than that. That you have to pay into to do that, but he might end up partnering. Otherwise, it would be a payment to this developer.
So the size is bigger than what the offset is at what the ownership units at Pequot would be. And also 8 points, that's significant. That's more than the first one, which was 7 points, as I recall. So to me, it's kind of a win-win that you're complying with our regulation. We have the sole discretion to determine if it's of adequate size and even the location. And I do think that we cannot direct that every single offsite below market rent unit to allow an ownership multifamily to take place at all has to be in the same neighborhood. We've already seen it. It's gone through us several times. It's hard to find a property that you can do it with. So to me, this overcomes that location question. And again, 8-30G, this is about 8-30G. 8-30G, does not say anything about where you have to put your affordable in your town. It only talks about how much affordable you have in your town. So this allows us to get 6 more units with 8 points in a what looks to be quite a beautiful building, literally right at the train station.
Commissioner Monahan.
I agree with Kathy. I think, the fact that this is going to be an ownership deed restricted building, is much better than obviously a rental building or a duplex. My question is concerning parking. This unit was approved for 18 units, 4-story apartment building with 24 covered parking spaces. How many parking spaces would each of these 6 units have? And how is overflow parking being addressed in that area?
I would have to go back to, I didn't handle the approval for 1427 Kings. So I'd have to go back and look at that. I mean, we're not changing anything in terms of number of units on the site or bedrooms or anything like that. It's just, instead of it being available to anybody, regardless of income, it's now going to be restricted to folks whose families make no more than 60% of AMI.
How many parking spaces would each of these 6 units each have? Because in this Pequot building, it would be 2, right?
Yeah, it was like 2. I think it was I think it was 24 spaces and there's 18 units.
Yeah,
So
24 spaces and
that's what they have access to. I apologize, Commissioner. I didn't handle that approval, so I'm not sure about if there was an overflow arrangement.
I can through you, Mr. Chair. So, adjacent to the train station areas, we have adopted regulations that allow 1.25 to 1.5 per unit. It's really gonna be up to the manager of that apartment building. I'm gonna assume that they're
Condo
gonna,
building, right?
no, it's rental.
No, yeah, so that was the other thing, 1427, it's rental, which,
So it's on LoopNet right now, priced at 1.249 million with strong demand for upscale housing in vibrant BlackRock. So what's wrong, LoopNet or?
yeah, I think it would be LoopNet. My understanding was it was.
It's a rental building.
Yeah, and so, yeah, and that's what, and just so you know, that would, if it was for sale, it would impact the HUE points and that would drop it down. The number of HUE.
Yes, it's on LoopNet that it's approved for plans to build a 21,054 four-story 18-unit residential apartment building. So that's for sale currently.
That might be to buy into the development possibly. But I would have to look into that because I was told by the developer that it was rental. Yeah.
Okay,
And that's how the permitting. Rental building. Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, just making sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what's being offered there.
Rental.
Go ahead, Commissioner Braun.
And both of these, we approved Pequot last year also, right?
No, Pequot was 24.
I mean, we approved the Pequot project. That's an approved zoning approval, right?
Yes.
Okay, because obviously if there
Yeah,
wasn't.
that wasn't like an 830.
No, but both of these projects have been approved, so you can't take advantage of the housing law, which doesn't allow us to require any parking for up to 15 units. 16 in September, right? So that doesn't apply here, but it would if you applied in if you apply now, you could take advantage of that, so.
It's an 18-unit building, the parking would apply.
Commissioner Randolph.
Well, not for the first 15, right?
No, that's not correct.
You have
Hold
to.
on. Really?
I think
Yes.
once you cross the threshold.
We could require total, the normal, or
No.
we could require parking. So that's
For
good to know.
developments with 17 units or more, you can require parking. Are you here for?
So
Sound like your taxes.
15? Okay, that's interesting. Okay, thanks. Good to know.
Commissioner Randolph.
Attorney Russo, I'm not sure if you read the did you have a chance to read the public comment?
Is this the Bosch comment letter? Yeah, I just got it, sorry.
Yeah, I think it came.
I think he submitted previously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this is
Different letter.
This is a different letter though. But,
Right.
So there's some very valid points made here, specifically about the intent of this law. And I'd just like to ask.
Of the regulation that we're
Yes.
utilizing?
The intent of the inclusionary housing regulations.
Okay.
Not
Not
the
that.
provision that we permitted, passed, and we were, the intent was to have substitute locations within 1,000 feet. If you remember when we discussed that.
Well, we were talking about a radius and then we.
So we were gonna do 1,000 feet, but we said that was too restrictive. So we said we would evaluate this on a case-by-case basis. So that's where we are now, but this is far in excess of 1,000 feet. And I think Mr. Bosch's comments, what he says, the actual question is, do Fairfield's inclusionary housing regulations mean inclusion, or do they mean affordable housing somewhere else in town? And I have to say that while the Kings Highway location is very good, it does not meet the intent of inclusionary housing. It provides affordable housing somewhere else in town. So I'm just saying, I know you're trying to find a solution. I think 900 square foot apartments comes close to 2,000 square foot apartments. It's still short, right? Because you said it would.
Well, the range at Pequot is 1,650 to 2,150, but for the 2-level ones, there's two
You
levels.
said on average it was 2,000.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
It's approximately
Yeah,
2,000.
2,000.
Right.
So we're at about 3,600 versus 4,000. So we're still short. And
But 981 square feet is some of the units, so I mean,
yeah, by 10%. We're 10% short on square footage roughly, because we're about 900 feet, so we're 3,600 feet versus 4,000 feet. So we're 10% short in terms of square footage. Could you talk about the amenities in the two buildings? Just, are they, what are the amenities? And I should know this for Pequot, I've just looked at it so many times.
Yeah, I mean, there's a common area in Pequot that's on the ground level. I don't know if they finalized what they're probably gonna have like a fitness area in there. But I don't know if they've actually finalized what they are going to have within that one amenity space. Other than that, there really isn't, there's a small creek that runs along the back of 250 Pequot, and there was a greenscaped area along that with some benches in it. Otherwise, the amenity is kind of, just what's around you, similar to 1427 Kings, in that a lot of it comes to what's around.
There's a common space at Pequot.
Mhm.
Is there a common space at Kings Highway?
I did not ask them if they had a common space at 1427 Kings, so I'd have to find that out.
The only place it could be is on the roof. The roof looks peaked, so I don't know where else it could be.
Yeah, I don't have the floor plans for the whole building, I'm
The
sorry.
ground floor's all garage. And the roof, I'm looking at the elevation, there's nothing. So the amenities on Kings Highway, it sounds like, are not equivalent. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
Or you need to-
well, I would need to see if they had a room. I mean, for 250 Pequot, it was one room. I could pull up how big it was, and the intent was just to have fitness.
Yeah.
Um,
And I get the whole HUE point argument. I think that's important. But the intent is to have an experience where inclusionary housing means people of different incomes are in a neighborhood that they would not normally need to be in. And that's the intent of the law. And I just can't see, and I think it's always great. It's a big improvement in HUE points, good. But what we're trying to accomplish with this law is to have inclusionary housing, meaning inclusion in a different part of town. And I just can't see that this meeting that the intent of that law. I like the HUE points, but it still seems to fall a little bit short unless you're gonna tell me there's some other amenity or something else that could tip the balance.
Well, I mean, one thing, your POCD specifically states a goal is to achieve a second moratorium. And this puts you farther towards that goal. And I don't think other towns or other commissions could say that this commission or this town could have done any better than it did in the past year and a half with addressing affordable housing. I mean, this commission has met more than any commission in the state. I would bet my house on that in the past year and a half, and working towards providing affordable housing and reviewing affordable housing applications. So I think this town has done its fair share in addressing affordable housing and earned its moratorium with the work that it did. And this application helps it further along to getting a second moratorium, which again, I think this town has earned with its work towards affordable housing. I think if you are looking at that specific part of it, then yes, this is relocating 2 units that would be in Southport to another location in town. But there's been affordable units that have been spread throughout town. And again, we're creating even more units for people who need affordable units. So there's 2 more units that are going to be available to people in a location that is not in Southport, but is an extremely convenient location, I think, for these residents.
We get to Commissioner Capozzi.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. And thanks, Attorney Russo, for the presentation. My experience is I grew up in Fairfield, but I lived for many years in Los Angeles and in New York City as well. My experience with affordable housing, living in communities where it's it's established and it functions. The theory the theory differs from the actual experience of life. And I think the question being asked here is a reasonable one, which is what can we do to balance the benefit for the town of Fairfield with the need for affordable housing and provide quality housing for people who need it, and also empower a developer to build something beautiful in Southport. I agree with um, pretty much all of the commissioners who have spoken, which is in that I think you've done a good job identifying affordable units. I think you've done a good job factoring in a method to advantage the town with 8 HUE points vis-a-vis 2 if we look at the development in Southport and those units being built on site in Southport. So I agree with all that. On the other side, I agree with Commissioner Randolph that it's not ideal. You know, we're not locating these affordable units in Southport. But I think, you know, my prior comments I still believe in my prior comments, which is that this is a relatively small number of units. This is not, you know, a 70 unit development where we're really rolling the dice here. And I think it's worth looking at the experiment. I don't love, I haven't been quiet about how I don't love the way that very, very wealthy and slick developers use a well-intentioned law, 830G, which was designed for a specific purpose, and use it as a means of forcing really, really improper, you know, just outsized developments into very small areas to maximize profit at the expense of the town. I don't, and so when I became a commissioner, one of my driving goals was to ensure that Fairfield achieves a second moratorium. And because I think that it's very important that the town have agency over every development that is approved to go into a town. And I think in this case, weighing all the factors, and again, you know, in my opinion, should these affordable units be located in Southport or much closer to it, given the cost of doing business in the town of Fairfield that, you know, Summit knows very well. Yeah, I think so. But at the same time, I'm willing to roll the dice here based on the 8 points available to Fairfield and the fact that these are new units. And as Commissioner Braun, I think very astutely pointed out a number of weeks ago, it appears as though 830G really does, the intention of the law really does favor rental units over owned units just based on the way that these points are awarded. And in our town governance, paying deference to the legislation that came from Hartford, I think working with it to the advantage of the town is important. So that's just my thinking.
And you know, if I could just respond to the chair, because I agree wholeheartedly with what Commissioner Capozzi said, and that was, you know, my thoughts on it. The thing I just want to keep going back to and pointing out is, yeah, well, this is a small number of units going. There's 2 at 50 Pequot, and it's becoming 4 additional at 1427 Kings. The 2 extra apartments are going to be very important to whoever moves into there, because it is going to give them an affordable rent in a great location. And so while the numbers where we're talking about might be small from 2 to 4, I think for those 2 new unit owners, this is going to be a big deal. They are going to have tremendous access to amenities and their location.
Commissioner Monahan.
I agree with everything Commissioner Capozzi just stated. I do believe it's a bit subjective to say that one area is quote unquote better than another area. Because, if you look at the Stone Ridge development, which is a condo development across the street, it's very, very desirable. It attracts, kind of an upscale clientele. It's walking distance to the train. There's a lovely kind of community around there. You have, access to medical facilities, access to restaurants, increasingly more shopping and dining, et cetera. So the area is kind of up and coming. So while it's not Southport Harbor, there's very few areas in the country that are Southport Harbor. But I do believe it's a very desirable location. I do think that the HUE points is, a great number, for the town, and we should take advantage of that. I think that the person, I agree with what Commissioner Capozzi said. But it's important to note that if you do the math and you're a developer, it is far more beneficial for a developer to have a residential apartment building than a condo complex, in most cases, to rent. So the reason that people are taking advantage of this law is because they can, and there are incentives to do so. So while we all want ownership model for people to build equity and feel as though they have, a permanent home, I think this is pretty close, and I would be supporting this.
Commissioner Levy?
I guess when all is said and done, I was on the commission when we passed this, provision where we could accept in lieu of units. At the time, I voted for it only because it provides that we have absolute and total discretion. Absolutely nothing that requires us to approve it, ever use it. We could put it on the books and never see it again. We've come a long way, and I acknowledge that the way 830G is written and the statutes which relate to the offset of common charges, that the for sale units are problematic. I recognize that. And of course, that's why we've had discussions about if in fact we go with a sale unit on 260, you're basically going to have to limit the common charges forever on those units in order to comply with the law. That's my opinion. But so I have to look at this. What is the balance? We've come far from Ardmore. This is a desirable area town. It is 4 units instead of 2, which doubles the number of affordable or the number of households which would benefit from affordable units. It is double the points. It is smaller by, I'll take it at 10%, but a big factor is that it's not inclusionary in the sense that you have people at different socioeconomic levels residing together and getting the benefits that comes from that melding. But ultimately, whether or not to exercise our discretion, got to balance it too. And, I think what might be the turning factor would be if it's 10% smaller, then on top of, I also like the fact that the 4 units would be 60% and those 4 would be rental in perpetuity. That's very important. So to me, the only remaining factor would be, how do we make up the difference? This is a desirable area. It's not Southport. We don't get the benefit of the, people living together. But if the developer were to throw in, let's say 10% of what I think the 2 units might sell for, which is 4 million, 10% of that's 40,000. So a 40,000 contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund might be the critical difference in terms of our exercise of discretion. 10% of 4 million. Which is the benefit. You're right. I'm done. My math, for a change, my math is off.
You want to answer that now, or do you need a minute to think?
I certainly can't spend his money without it, but
over 40, but
Yeah, I'd go with 40.
I don't know if he's there. And I will say, because again, I didn't want, I could pull up the plans for 250 Pequot and
CHR anyway.
the
Wait, let me just, because I have other commissioners who want to ask questions. So you're not gonna commit to a yes?
Well, and the other thing I'm thinking about is there's no fee in lieu provision in the regulation, so I don't even know if that is allowed, is the part that I'm contemplating in my head right now.
Why wouldn't it be if it's subject to our total discretion?
Because accepting a fee in lieu that isn't in the regulation. I mean, I
Total discretion's total discretion.
Come back to this. Commissioner Zablock? Commissioner Zablock?
Yeah, I'm somewhat conflicted on this. And I am, well, I like the fact, that we have more viewpoints. I like that. I'm concerned about the inclusionary housing regulations, and I'm concerned about any kind of dangerous precedent we might be setting by switching it at this late date. And I may be green on this because, well, listen, I'm fairly new here, and I haven't seen all of the information on Pequot. And so just from what I'm getting from right now, I am somewhat conflicted, and I'd like somebody to clarify that for me. And I'm concerned, like I said, I'm concerned about a precedent for something that we may not like, and that we're stuck because we said it tonight.
And I'm sorry, can you just, what are you looking for clarification on, just so we can direct that to the right?
Well, so if we're going to say, okay, if you're in favor of this, and, you know, I'm looking at Mr. Bosch's very well-written letter and the inclusionary housing regulations, which I think is very important. What's to preclude someone in the future from doing the same thing, like switching this affordable from one unit or from one building to another building? And while it seems like it's okay for this, and it seems great, but what happens when it's not? And we already set the precedent by saying, okay, here.
You don't need to answer this. We can handle this. Thank you. So it's a great
Yeah.
question. I think I'll just note that the regulation that we adopted allowing this, I guess, addresses the issue of precedent in that you don't really need a precedent one way or the other. And this is not, I've made my position on this clear, so this is not me arguing in favor of us doing this now or in the future, but the ordinance allows for it at our sole discretion. So upon our adoption of the regulation, there was no need for a precedent. We authorized it. So developers or applicants are free to propose this. And it's
For sale.
you're right, where for sale, inclusionary housing is in play. And it's at our sole discretion to accept that or not based on whatever individual criteria each commissioner has. Does that help at all?
That helps a lot, greatly. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Capozzi, and then Monahan.
Just real quick, I forgot. Commissioner Randolph made a good point about the amenities. Attorney Russo, do you think your client would be amenable to giving each of the units family memberships to Edge Fitness, which is about a 3-minute drive or a 10-minute walk from the Kings Highway development, as a sort of an amenity? Even if it's not available on site, but at least they'd have access to a gym, which is a nice amenity.
If I could,
Sorry, go ahead.
if I could make a recommendation, you might be better suited to find out whether one of the other buildings, whether you could do something that allowed for usage in one of the adjacent buildings where it's walkable, is what I would recommend. So if Alto has a fitness center in their development, it might be better to see if there could be some sort of collaborative relationship with that building, for example, as opposed to having to have someone get in their car and then drive. That's what I would recommend, just because of, I think, the nature of the neighborhood that we're trying to build, which is, you know, hopefully a bit more walkable.
Sure, I guess but just any kind of arrangement that would allow for either reciprocity in another building or a gym membership that gives them an amenity that's sort of included in the however that pans out, but gives them an amenity that's a nice amenity to have.
I think I
doing
could say, I think I could safely say that a membership at Edge is cheaper than Equinox.
In perpetuity.
So-
Well,
Exactly.
I mean, if they want to drive to Equinox, I love Equinox. I'd be an advocate for getting them a membership at Equinox, but it seems like I'm just trying to be convenient to the location.
No,
but-
I'm just saying, as far as proximity to a good gym, to a gym, I think they have a more affordable option at 1427 Cakes, but I will look into it. I can look into that. Because again, I wasn't involved in, so I'm not sure if they may have another arrangement already.
Mr. Monahan?
So the Judd Estate in town, is a little bit of a hot topic among town residents, and I know, Attorney Russo, you were kind of a bit involved in that, and I know there was a housing trust fund that was tapped by a developer. I just want to make sure that that also cannot be tapped for these units at this development. Is that correct? That I'm making the correct assumption there?
Well, one that is, because that has come up. I am not the Russo in the Judd Estates. It's one of the most common Italian-American names in the country. It is not, it is no affiliation to my family.
Okay, great.
For the record, but,
Great, thank you.
was that rental?
Yes.
That was
but-
rental,
but
so it
it's-
wouldn't be
but it's
available.
going to be operated by the housing authority.
Okay,
So it's a very different
but
property.
the rental properties cannot avail themselves of the,
Housing trust fund money, correct?
offsite BMR regulation. Is that what she's saying? Could they put units into another?
No, I think what she's saying is she doesn't want this particular developer to have access to the affordable housing funds to facilitate the inclusionary units at this development. Is that correct, Commissioner Monahan?
Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Harrigan.
I'm not sure you could answer that. Are you able to answer that, Ms. Harrigan?
Well, I
You're
think,
not, oh, I said that because Attorney Russo is not the attorney for the
Yes.
developer.
And also not the Russo in that.
I think that.
Sorry, my apologies.
No,
No,
no.
but I think the commission can say that the developer has to pay for this out of his own funds. He cannot seek public funds to offset his requirement for this offsite BMR, if that's what you're asking. Because I think that's what Commissioner Monahan is alluding to. The public shouldn't help this developer satisfy their requirement. Because I think the point that you're trying to make, Commissioner Monahan?
Yes, yes, you made it much more succinctly.
And that could be a condition.
Sure.
I think the public would appreciate that.
So if, I'm not sure if, I mean, no, it sounds like Attorney Russo needs to check with his client on a couple of things. But I think when we're voting, whoever is making a motion, if you move to approve, like can make a motion that includes a requirement, a condition of approval that addresses the concern you just raised, Commissioner Monahan.
Yeah, which is I need proper language direction.
You can work on that. Commissioner Braun? You're on mute, Commissioner.
Hi, you can hear me. So, Director Harrigan, the affordable housing regulations we just passed a month or so ago, a couple months ago, do they reduce the number of units that require affordable from 10 to 5? I think that's what we passed.
That is
And-
correct.
Okay, and they increased it from 10% of the units to 12 or 15% in the Commerce Drive district, right?
That's correct. Well, for TOD developments.
That's only Commerce Drive. Does that include Fairfield Center also or no?
It includes if you apply a TOD overlay in the design residence district also.
So they have to apply by project for the TOD status. Okay. But so this is another concern that, we need to grab this while we can. We're turning into a rental community. It's kind of scary because Commissioner Harrison and I put together this a couple years ago. You can't see it. Okay. It's a list of approximately 2,000 primarily rental units that are approved but not built yet. We haven't seen them, haven't felt the impact. And I'm concerned, so we need to encourage ownership and ownership, middle housing, multifamily, and this legislation, this regulation that we passed allows us to do it. And by reducing the number of units from 10 to 5, I wonder, I'm just sort of speculating, would that make it more difficult to have multifamily because it doesn't pencil out? I know I was trying to settle another case and they wouldn't go down below like 10 or so, or 9 to have any affordable because it's too much affordable for the total number of units. And so I think right now we have something in front of us. We have 6 affordable units that will be built within the next year, giving us our points, our 8 points. I think it's fabulous, and we should not look a gift horse in the mouth. But I do, that is an issue, a question I have about what we just passed. Do you see an issue with that potentially arising, that we will not be able to get any ownership affordable? We might not, it might be hard to get any at all with our inclusionary zoning if we require it for 5. And does that, secondary question is, does the state law supersede that, which requires, as of right, middle housing up to 9 units, but without affordable? I'm just thinking out loud, but I think we need to accept this for what it's giving us. But those are the questions I've been thinking about.
So for now, I think we just have to deal with this issue, but it sounds like you need to speak to your client before.
I'm trying to do that right now, but I didn't get it. But yeah, I will get more information from them.
I think it also sounds like most commissioners seem to have a position, maybe with some requests for conditions. So are we meeting next week?
We are.
And we have, I mean, if we could have this on the top of the agenda for next week and really just get the answers to your questions. And then I think everybody's made their positions clear. So ideally try to just get that response from you, see if that materially impacts where people are as far as a vote goes, and then we can make a decision on this. Unless there's some new information. Go ahead, Commissioner Monahan.
Could we just regroup on terms of what those terms would be and what the questions would be for the developer?
So feel free to jump in if I miss one, but there's one about willingness to make a contribution to the Affordable Housing Fund. Yes. There is one, Commissioner Levy's request was $40,000. No.
400,000.
I thought it was 10% of.
I said
10%
40, my math was off.
Oh, you're okay.
10%
So I heard you right. Okay.
You did
Okay.
get me right.
So 400,000.
Well, the question is, what is the developer willing to put on the table in addition?
Okay, so you heard the direction there.
Somewhere
400,000.
A condition that relates to providing the equivalent of an amenity. I think the suggestion was gym membership for residents. Commissioner Monahan, and Commissioner Monahan's.
Or reciprocal privileges.
Sorry.
Or reciprocal privileges at an adjacent.
And then I guess just really a confirmation, we could impose it anyway, but a confirmation that you are willing to accept as a condition that the applicant, your client, will not make use of Affordable Housing Trust Fund funding, which again, this commission can impose as a condition whether or not your client's willing to live with it, but this would still be.
And the number of parking spots per unit.
That's not,
To the extent you can find that out, please.
but the
Parking is.
I'll just see what the arrangement, what the thought was with the development as far as parking.
but I'm sorry, both of the projects have been approved with the parking there.
Correct.
So are we?
I'll provide the
Again,
information.
so technically, this is at the full discretion of the commission. So within the boundaries of the law, there is, I suppose, nothing stopping the commission from putting on a condition that the Attorney Russo's client would have to somehow provide supplemental parking. I would presume that's not going to be an acceptable condition, but it's at the commission's sole discretion. Any commissioner could decide that that is their personal condition for voting yes.
I think at least one parking spot per unit.
But there is one parking.
There is.
There.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say also, this is kind of a unique location and situation with the neighboring properties. Alto built an extra 360 parking spaces because they thought they were going to be able to lease commuter spaces, and they may do that. I don't know. I mean, some people may find that more a better location than the surface lot. I'm not really sure. But they have a surplus of parking. So, you know, if there were residents within there who approached the property management and said, hey, I want an extra space than the one that you provide me as part of the rental agreement, can I lease an extra space? Our understanding has been with other buildings that they make that available at an extra monthly charge. You know, those couple of extra spaces. If that doesn't work, there are also spaces that I'm sure could be long-term leased at Alto right across the street. And this has been our experience with, for example, Umpqua Place that was built at a 1-to-1 ratio with the number of units and the parking spaces that they bought, that they provide in that 830G application, where we really didn't have any discretion as a town to tell them how many they had to include as part of their development. Our understanding is that for that development, that has mostly worked out well. There was one occupant who wanted an extra space, and they were able to lease an extra space from the town's parking department. So I think there's options in this neighborhood where, you know, this has been approved with a certain number of spaces, but there's also alternatives if folks have more than one vehicle per unit.
Provided there's nothing that states you have to lease an apartment with a parking space. I'm just saying it should be mandated. There's at least one spot per unit to be fair.
I mean, to be
It's
fair,
not being decoupled all the time across the country. So I
Yeah.
think it's important it's in writing.
but there might be somebody who doesn't want to pay extra for a space that they don't need. So however, I don't know that it's, you know, for us, we know that they have more than one space per unit. And there may be somebody who chooses to live in that building who doesn't have a car at all and would benefit from not having to pay extra for a space. So I think theoretically what we can say is we know that there's at least one space per unit. And there's the option, because there's extra spaces, that if somebody wants to lease 2 spaces per unit, they can do that up to when those number of spaces meets, you know, is married to each particular rental unit. And then there's extra parking that can be leased across the street.
But to make it apples to apples with the condo development in Southport, there is parking with that development. So there should also be parking with this development.
There is.
Yeah.
I'll get details about what. Yeah.
Okay, so you have your mark. Commissioner Braun, go ahead.
Can I understand what Commissioner Levy is requesting, or is Commissioner Levy requesting that this applicant kick in 400,000 to the Housing Trust Fund in addition to providing the 6 units?
Somewhere between 40 and 400.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Somewhere between 40 and 400,000.
And what is the rationale for that?
The rationale is that these units are smaller. It's in a different location. He gets the benefit of it being a rental as opposed to forfeiting roughly $4 million in sales. Would cost him about $3 million. So it's in order to achieve a financial parity to justify our exercise of discretion.
Okay, I am totally against that. That is not what our regulation calls for. It is not about financial parity. And it's not about penalizing the developer. We're getting 8 points here. Anything we do to penalize him for doing this is not going to be good. And I don't think we should.
Commissioner, I understand your point, but again, that's why I asked that any commissioner if they have anything they'd like to Attorney Russo to go back to his client with, since he's doing that already, and any commissioner can exercise their discretion on this request. So understand you may not find it reasonable or any other commissioner's request, but in this case, it's a unique situation. So you can decide that you can't live with that request when we get to a vote.
Well, we actually vote on this?
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Will we vote on it? Yes.
With conditions of requirements such as that?
The conditions that the consensus of the commission agrees on, which may or may not include that. But if Attorney Russo is going back to his client with a series of questions, I think it's fair for Commissioner Levy to get an answer to that too.
It's basically twofold. He makes an offer, we either accept it or we don't. Simple.
Commissioner Capozzi.
I understand Commissioner Braun's point about the contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but I also I agree with Commissioner Levy. Look, this is simple economics. This is like going to a car dealer. Like they're not making an offer that doesn't benefit them. So, and we're moving our, we're trying to balance something for that benefits the town of Fairfield, and it's a straightforward negotiation. And I think the fact that the town of Fairfield does have an affordable housing trust fund is fantastic. And I think that we, as a commission, if we can benefit that trust fund by allowing a developer to do something that benefits the developer and also benefits the town, we should look at that. This is a fantastic community with a lot of wonderful attributes and wonderful public services. One of the best school systems in the country. We pay a premium in taxes to live here, and I think that anything that we can do in a capitalist free market society to benefit the town, we should look at. And again, a very sophisticated developer is not going to come to this commission. This is just my opinion, but a sophisticated developer is not going to come to this commission with an offer like this unless this was, at the end of the day, to extraordinary benefit to that developer. And so I think we, as the commission, in the interest of the town of Fairfield, the town we are charged to serve and protect, have every right to ask that that benefit to a private for-profit builder be balanced against the best interests of the town of Fairfield. That's my opinion, and I agree with Commissioner Levy for asking for it.
Commissioner Braun, last point on this.
Yeah, I just think it's sad that we took $570,000 of that trust fund to give it to a nonprofit developer to
All right.
basically go against what the town fought for 4 years against in court on the wetlands app on the High Street, the Judd Estate. So now we're putting money in by taking from another developer. It makes no sense. It's a roadblock. So that's my point.
Okay, thank you. You good, Attorney Russo? You
I have the
understand?
marching orders, yeah. I'll be back next week with it.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney Russo. Okay.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to our public hearings. The first is on section 25.14, traffic impact studies. Adds new section pertaining to the requirements and standards for traffic impact studies.
Do you want me to cue this up or?
Either way.
Okay. So
ahead.
I'll just, you all have met our DPW director, Frank Batiste. This has been something I think that has been a to-do list for the commission. Understanding that we have had prior applications where we have had traffic studies, but no requirements that dictate what needs to be included within traffic studies. And the courts have found against us because we don't have these regulations within, or these standards or requirements within our zoning regulations. So I will turn it over to our Director of Public Works.
I just want to add one thing. This is part of, this is not the first item we've had like this, which is meant to sort of codify which regulations we are adhering to in cases where it's not necessarily codified, and it's gotten us into trouble in the past where certain commissioners have wanted to hold an applicant to a standard that doesn't exist in our regulations, and we can't, and judges will say that we're not allowed to. And so this is the series of items. I think we did one on stormwater that fits into that category also. I think is meant to protect the commission's ability to make the kinds of decisions it's tried to, and in some cases not been able to make in the past. So,
Thank you. Thank you. So Frank Batiste, Director of Public Works. Yes, just kind of adding on to what You just said this is similar to what we did with the stormwater regulations. We're trying to formalize in our zoning regs what our requirements are. And I also think it helps the applicants on the front side too, to know what they're, give them an outline of what they're just supposed to submit to us for review. So this outlines the requirements for the traffic impact studies, which is effectively 100 trips in the peak hour, or at my designees, which would be engineering likely, reviewing it. Discretion to request it. Some of those areas where we might request it, where we're not meeting those 100 peak hour trips, might be school construction work, or someone proposing a drive-through, or if we have a problem area or intersection we know of in town, and there's someone coming in right on top of that, where we want to see the impacts and how much worse things are going to get from a traffic perspective. So that's all outlined here. We also list all the standards we go by, ITE, Connecticut DOT, as well as AASHTO and NACTO. And then there's also section, if it's, I don't know if these numbers are going to go in this exact way, but 25.14.4 gives you the minimum requirements for the content we look for in the study. So that's all outlined there as well. Capacity analysis, we're looking at trip generation using ITE. Then we're also looking at things like parking, as well as during construction. I know in my short time here, I've gotten complaints when there's larger construction or development projects going on, where the construction vehicles are impacting neighborhoods, and we get a lot of complaints about that. We can't really do much about it if it's legal parking, but this allows us to review that on the front side when someone comes in, where there's going to be a lot of construction work. We can require them to submit a plan to us on how they plan on managing all those vehicles. It also looks at things like site distance, et cetera, at the driveways. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Go over each section one by one. I have questions on each section. So can we start at the purpose of the study?
Sure.
Okay, so were police and fire also consulted on this? Who wrote it? Have you talked to schools? Who else weighed in on this?
We wrote it with DPW and planning and zoning.
And the engineering department.
I include engineering and DPW, yes.
So police and fire, were they also consulted?
Not for the traffic study, no.
Do we think that that's important? I personally think that's very important.
Well, I think they comment themselves on the code review, correct?
They do.
Like the traffic study itself is usually something reviewed by engineering, so it lives with.
Given these laws that have come down the pike, these traffic studies are obviously, something that may not come in front of us, right? So always, I'll put it that way. So it's incredibly important that these are as rigid as possible, and that anyone who should weigh in before we vote on them and finalize them. So that's why I asked if police and fire have looked at it, have weighed in, because I do think it's incredibly important. So again, who wrote this? You wrote it in consultation with the town planning and zoning.
Correct. That's
Well,
correct.
with the engineering department.
With engineering and planning and zoning, correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Who is
And
normally reviews our traffic studies.
Yes.
Was there anything that was suggested by the engineering department that was not included?
I don't believe
No.
so, no.
It was just clarification language. And I think the engineering department actually added a couple of different things.
They
So
did.
there was a list of different, for example, like there's a list within here that suggests the different documents that you should consult in order to, accurately and adequately prepare a traffic impact study. And the engineering department added to that. So they looked at this very thoughtfully, very carefully. I will say that the engineering department works in concert with, the traffic division, but traffic division's role is enforcement, and it's not, street design or right-of-way design. That is the discretion of our Department of Public Works and our engineering department. So this
Well, we
has
also
more
have
to do
complete
with-
streets and bike and pedestrian safety infrastructure. So there are other groups kind of weighing in on this as well. So think it's important to note that if we're gonna have complete streets and bike and pedestrian infrastructure looked at, commenting here, we should also have the police and fire talking about what the traffic impact studies should include. That's all.
Okay, well, if I could,
Go ahead.
yes, so the complete streets design and bike and pedestrian infrastructure is all part of the right of way. It's how we in Public Works and Engineering look at designing the roadways. So that's kind of all encompassing in the engineering portion of this.
Commissioner Randolph.
Director Patisse, Director.
Yes.
Yeah. How does this compare to CT Dot's standard for preparing traffic studies?
It is very similar. I think we even had a line in here where if there was some conflict with any other regulations, we would defer to the CONDOT standards as
And
well.
so essentially, we're codifying what the state's regulating. Is that generally
Yes.
what we're doing here?
Yes, I would say this is industry standard.
So, and
Hang on.
the standards here are consistent with CTDOT. And then, so the trigger to do traffic study is 100 vehicle counts at peak.
At peak hour, yes.
Yeah, is that consistent with CT Dot?
Yes, I believe so. Yep.
They're 200, aren't they?
They might be more
I think they're more, right?
because they have larger, the state roads are
Yeah,
typically.
so
larger.
I think they're 200. So our requirement here is a little bit stricter.
Yes,
We're gonna require a traffic study at a lower threshold of traffic. And then also school construction. So we've got discretion to ask for these under special circumstances. And then just to clarify, should we pass this, I know it's, I encountered this here and at my other, my day job. There's always questions about ITE
it's,
as a organization, and by adopting this, we're acknowledging that ITE is the recognized standard. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the CT dot recognize ITE?
yes, it's common. IT is kind of the global standard for traffic
And
studies.
so is there any other standard besides ITE that you're aware of that might be an alternate to ITE? Because I know ITE is regularly questioned, and I just want to clarify that.
I mean, IT is typically the industry standard. I mean, there's other manuals listed in here, AASHTO and
But
you know,
for
the highway
traffic,
design.
for traffic
But for
count.
traffic analysis and trip generation, it's IT. It's the-
So by passing this, I just want to get this out on the table. We're acknowledging that the industry standard ITE is the standard that we're going to be adopting. And right now, we don't have that standard, which is, when I've been on the commission, has caused a lot of confusion. And it's not just here, it's any other meetings that's often an issue. But ITE, just to confirm, is what CT dot recognizes and what any TIS for traffic impact study for a Connecticut Department of Transportation study uses ITE, and we're adopting that same standard. Is that correct?
Correct, as do other municipalities. It's, like you said, we haven't formally adopted it. It is what the industry standard is when we review these things, but this formalizes it for us.
And then near and dear to my heart, some questions were raised about NACTO, urban bikeway design. So would this also formally incorporate those standards into our town ordinance?
Yes, because that's how we have a complete streets ordinance. Personally, that's a safety thing for me as well. We should be designing complete streets. So that's kind of the portion of that, whereas IT is really more the vehicle trip
And then
control.
lastly, the geometry that's I prescribed in these standards under C are, those are all turning radiuses that accommodate emergency vehicles, and that geometry all incorporates things like fire engine turning radiuses, separation of intersection distances. All those safety issues are incorporated into the standards that you've listed under C. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I think we even allude to that later under the requirements of the study for site distance as well.
Thanks.
Commissioner Braun.
Yeah, when it says it shall be required, who makes the decision that it will be required? Is that the zoning, our zoning board here? Or is it DPW?
You point to where you're looking.
I'm sorry, 25.14.2, requirement for traffic impact study. By the way, I'm really glad we're adding this. It's very important. I just need to understand some details about it. Who makes, there's a discretionary decision to be made by somebody that a traffic study will or will not be necessary. Who makes that decision?
Correct. So the way it's written now, there's an automatic trigger at the 100 trips in the peak hour, and then letter B, it's at the discretion of the Director of Public Works or designated staff. So currently, well, prior to the last charter change, the Director of Public Works was also the town engineer. Now it's Director of Public Works designates the town engineer. I'm a licensed engineer, so that's me right now, but going someone else to have the role. That's why we added the designated staff.
And for the 100 peak hour vehicle trips, that is an automatic trigger. Can that be better defined as, is that inbound, outbound, both? Which peak hour? Is it morning, evening, weekend, or site specific? Should that be better defined so that, people that are applying or other people could understand what triggered it exactly? Because it wouldn't be required at all if it wasn't triggered. I think it probably should be defined a little bit better. And how do you see that as, how would you define the peak hour trips?
So it's any peak hour. So when you do a traffic study based on the volumes, that's going to tell you where the peak falls. And the 100 vehicle trips is any direction.
Can you just, for the benefit of the public, because I know this comes up a lot.
Yeah.
When we talk about traffic studies in connection to applications, and I think there's a perception that the peak hour is like rush hour or like a specific hour. It should be a specific hour or time period of the day. Like there's a morning peak that would be 8, but in theory it could be, I won't put words in your mouth.
Sure.
Just explain that.
Sure. Yeah, typically there's a morning, afternoon, and evening peak hour. They do shift a little based on the usages around those roadways and around, there's a lot of factors.
It's not a fixed.
It's not a fixed hour. It's when you do the background traffic data, that will show when the peak trips are. So those become the 3 peak hours over the course of the day. Then you have them on a weekend as well.
But the peak according to what? According to usage of that development or usage of the town area, or peak what?
The actual road. So if we're looking at Pequot Avenue, you would have to take a traffic data on Pequot Avenue itself, and then in real time, what's currently on that roadway without the development there.
It's continuous measurement, and then you look to see
the actual
what
data.
in what hour did the most number of trips occur, and that is the peak hour. That
Correct.
determines what the peak hour is.
That is correct.
By doing a traffic count.
By doing a traffic count before the study.
You count the cars, and so at church, the peak hour is gonna be Sunday. A school, it's gonna be 3 o'clock.
Correct.
Likely a factory is gonna be when the shift goes in and out, so.
And I only dwell on that because I think with that perception that it's a fixed hour comes, well, why didn't you look at? I think the peak hour is something else. Why didn't you look at that? But it's not, it's an objective measurement based on it's a continuous measurement.
Correct.
And peak hour is determined by what those numbers say.
It's by the real-time traffic that's on that roadway before the development comes in, where the estimating of peak traffic or additional traffic comes in. That's where we go to IT for the trip generation. But formalizing, or not formalizing, but determining that exact peak hour is done by real-time traffic on the street. So if you're looking at a development that might be, a whole block, then you would look at all the roads. But if it's just one road, you would look at that road. But it's the traffic that exists today on that road. You have to count, and that determines the peak hour.
Thanks, Commissioner Braun.
Yeah, so peak hour again. So Commissioner Randolph just threw me for a loop. I don't recall seeing peak hour based on the future use. I recall seeing it mostly based on rush hour. I need to understand that better. So peak hour would be determined based on the future use that you're applying for, when people will be coming back and forth to that use, school, hospital, whatever, church. That's how you determine peak hour, and then you look at the background, in other words, the existing traffic during those peak hours that are determined by the future use?
I'm sorry, you look at the existing traffic first, and that's what determines the peak hour. Because that's what's happening today before anyone does anything.
Okay. You look at the existing first, then the
Then
future, how does that factor in then?
So the future, then you using, the IT trip generation, and some other factors, you would apply based on whatever the proposal is, what that increase in traffic would be, and then you apply it to those peak hours and see what it is.
And other approved plan developments.
Yes, if there's other developments on the same road that aren't built yet, you add those in as well.
And background growth.
I see you look for 3 years, I think, for, is that approved developments only that have not been built yet?
Yes.
Okay, and then I do have another comment about, triggering the study to begin with. I feel like the zoning board, since we're the ones who have to make decisions on whether this project will be safe, we should have some say so. In other words, maybe it doesn't generate 100 peak trips, and maybe the DPW director does not, maybe yourself, does not feel that it's necessary. Maybe we do though, based on whatever we're hearing from people that live there or whatever we observe. I think there should be a section C here that says the zoning commission certainly has the authority to require a traffic study. In other words, our commission should have the authority to require any information that is useful in us rendering a fully informed decision. So it might be over and above what you might require. Would you have a problem adding that to this? Is there a problem with that you could see?
It's in, Director Harrigan,
Yeah.
this would be this discretion exercised by the director of Public Works or staff would be exercised at the time of application.
Correct. I think we have to be very careful about non-data driven requests. It has not served us well in the courts in the past. So I just want to, that's one of the reasons why we are putting this in our qualified experts who are employed by the town, who look at traffic data, our director of public works, they're in charge of our public right-of-ways, our roadways, understanding, any kind of traffic safety implementations that need to be installed within our public right-of-ways. I think we need to vest this in our licensed professionals who have the education licensing to be able to do this work. I think we get ourselves in trouble when we give general discretion to the commission without qualifying factors. So I'm nervous about adding a catch-all if the commission deems it necessary without some indicators. Again, if somebody's building a duplex, that is not a development that requires a traffic study, even if the commission feels like they need it.
I would say even for a larger development, I wasn't even thinking about that concern, but from a practicality standpoint, if we had to add, that would be an additional layer of review before we heard the application, and we have timelines that we need to pass. So do we run the risk at that point of letting an application expire and then having it approved automatically because we didn't?
We do. I think this was something that, every roadway, I know that people want free flowing roads, but during peak hours, there's delay on roadways. That's just the way that roadways function. So I think, relying on our director of public works, our engineering department to understand that, even in downtown, I know that there's been concern that, oh my goodness, it takes so long to get through downtown. Well, that's because we have a really successful, vibrant, busy downtown. And that's going to be implicit in some of the delay because we generate trips to our very successful Fairfield Center. So that's going to add delay on the roadways that is acceptable, right? So I think we have to understand roadways in different in the different ways in which they function. If we want more expeditious travel through downtown, it would mean that our downtown would not be a destination that's as successful with each business kind of generating their own individual trips. So I think we have to kind of, if there's a certain area of town where we feel like we need different parameters, I think we're gonna really have to justify that and work with DPW and engineering to understand what those very specific data-driven criteria would be. I'm concerned about a catch-all allowing the TPZ Commission to
Commissioner
dictate a new study.
Commissioner Monahan.
So, thank you for that commentary. We have a major problem right now with people not wanting to go downtown because of the traffic. We have people going through town to get from one town to the next, using our state road as somewhat of a highway to get there. So it's not just people stopping in and visiting shops and restaurants downtown, using the library, et cetera, et cetera. It's people transiting through the town as well. So there's, for everything that we do, we can make mistakes. We need to have some sort of protection to say, maybe we were wrong, maybe we should look at this again. If we have a duplex on a very busy corner, yes, we should be looking at potential traffic studies and how it affects. If it's near a school, if it's near a church, if it's near a, yes, we should have the opportunity to have some sort of, this is, again, we're creating something because we had a problem. We want to not open ourselves up to litigation. That being said, that's the opportunity to be as rigid as possible within the parameters of law to make sure we have all of the data on every single development before we approve it, so we don't have an issue. Once it's built, it's built. We have to live with it. So why not make sure we have the traffic studies and the impact studies, not only for, protection of residents crossing the street, also cars, students, bike riders, et cetera. So, I think we need to think of that as well, not just let's make sure we don't end up in court. Let's make sure we have as much possible data as possible so that we can make the best possible decision for the members of the town.
Commissioner Randolph, and then Lady.
Director Peace, there's a study of just the actual site conditions, the turning radiuses, the parking on the perimeter of the property. I've often heard it called a TIA, traffic impact analysis.
Yes.
Is that the terminology here?
Yeah, I think we have this traffic impact study, but it's the same.
TIA?
Yeah, it's the same.
So
study.
we require a TIA for every project, don't we?
No.
No.
That just requires the turning radius and sightlines?
Well, yes.
For a sightline analysis and basically exit configuration, we require that for every project, correct?
Engineering will require that for the apron.
Typically, yes.
Yeah. So those concerns that are not volume related are addressed, and is that something we should add in here? That a sightline evaluation?
And we do have some safety things in here. It talks about the crash analysis and
Those sightlines has been a big.
it does mention the driveways, stopping site
But
distance.
rather than going through requiring a full, having the cutoff point at 100 peak volume, and it's a yes or no, should we perhaps address a TIA for quote significant development at the discretion of the?
It's in the parking.
Yeah, was it in there already?
I think it might be in the OS.
That it already does if you're using TIS and TIA interchangeably.
Yeah,
You're not.
TIS is different. TIS is looks at volume. TIA is typically looks at just the characteristics on the perimeter of the property and the sightline separation distances. So there's two different levels of study. So for example, some of the mid-sized apartment buildings where sightlines were a concern, staff asked for that, but perhaps we should add that to address Commissioner Monahan's concern that, we require some type of evaluation. I'm throwing it, you're the expert, you're the engineer, I'm like 3/4 informed on this stuff. but I'm just asking if perhaps we could add that.
You want to add it additionally to the,
Just but saying,
Clarify it.
sightline analysis for a project at the discretion of.
I have one other question that I didn't ask before, but what is the,
Anyway, let's let.
letter N under 2514.4. Says applicant shall provide stopping and intersection site distance analysis in a report or study. I mean, we could expand on that possibly.
I want to make sure
Make
that
it more clear.
it's not a TIS or nothing, that we have
So
that.
I see what you're saying. You want to make sure it's required even when we're not having the.
TIS, yeah.
Commissioner Monahan, I'll get to you next. I had already told Commissioner Levy he could speak
Yeah.
after.
Just briefly to review, make sure I understand it. This analysis would come in at the application stage, correct?
That's correct.
And initially, there's a threshold determination whether or not a traffic impact study would be needed, and that would be either where, I guess, what's submitted by the applicant shows more than 100 peak hour trips, or something in your discretion where it might be a significant traffic generator, might have an impact on the local roads and everything else. You pretty much have very broad discretion there when appropriate to order a study. And that might even include a duplex on a horrible intersection, I guess, correct?
In theory, it could, yeah.
I mean, if it's gonna have a major impact on that intersection, that might be something that you would consider. And then from there, I guess it then becomes having the applicant comply with all the requirements so that you have a full, complete, and accurate traffic study, correct?
That's correct.
And then if at that point you're not satisfied with it, you have the opportunity to request an outside review at their expense, right?
That's right. That's
And
also,
when all is said and done, we'll have a traffic study that you've approved or you've said meets all the requirements, and theoretically we could rely on when we're making a decision as to the impact of any development on the surrounding community or traffic, right?
that's correct.
I missed anything?
I don't think so.
Thanks.
Commissioner Monahan.
three things. One, how does the IT trip generation manual in the 11th edition compare to the 12th edition, which was updated? And what additional, this you cite here or latest edition, but what we're citing the 11th, what's the difference between the 11th and the 12th? What's different in it? If we're citing it, we should know kind of what the update is. That's number one. Number two, it says Director of Public Works or its designated staff. I believe that just should be you. I don't think there should be someone else making the decision. I think you have the expertise. You may have someone on staff, but I think it should fall on you, not like, although you have, I know a lot of the people on your staff, you have an excellent staff, but that it should rest with you and not someone on your staff. I also wanted to know what the definition of significant impacts to traffic operation, how do we define that? Again, this is something where we could be sued based on these things that we have in writing. So I just want to make sure we understand what the definition is to that.
So the trip generation manual, not too much has changed. I guess we could update that. I'm not opposed to that.
Has it been adopted by?
I don't know if it's adopted.
So
yet.
there were a bunch of different changes made to it. So I just wanted to know, what do you believe they are?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, honestly. I would have to look.
I would love if you would look at that to see if there's anything new in there that
I
you
mean,
would maybe consider integrating or removing from this based on that study. I don't know it, but I will read it tomorrow.
So the trip generation manual looks at the use of the proposed site and then applies factors to it for increases in traffic. So that's what it does. Looking at which each individual usage changed, I don't know without going into that in more detail.
Given it was a 2021 reciting or latest edition, there now is a latest edition. I would just love to know kind of what those updates are, reciting them in our reg. That's all.
Okay. Then as far as the judgment being the director of DPW or designated staff, I think we're just trying to catch that change in the charter. So
Because I think one of the things that we've been called out on is, when you have a licensed engineer, that holds weight and with the courts. And so the charter change does not require that the DPW director is any longer a licensed engineer. So when you're talking about certification of roadway design and safety, that licensure carries a lot of weight. So if for whatever reason, the future DPW director is not licensed, then they could designate the town engineer, which by its job description is required to be a licensed engineer
But
in
is
the state of
Let me
Connecticut.
just tack onto this, is the, that was the first half of what I was gonna ask. Is there any one you would designate who wouldn't be a licensed engineer?
No, it has to be, the town engineer has to be a licensed engineer.
But it doesn't say, where it doesn't say town engineer, where it says designated staff, is there anyone you would designate who isn't a licensed engineer? And if not, does it make sense to just clarify that and say designated staff who is a licensed engineer?
I think we could probably do
Probably
that.
make that
We
revision.
can make that revision.
What type of engineer?
Professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut.
A licensed engineer in what capacity? Is it I mean, there's lots of different types of engineers.
A PE, professional engineer licensed by the state of Connecticut. This is how Connecticut words it.
Okay. And then the significant impacts, if you could discuss that, like how is that defined?
So are you looking for tighter language there?
No, I just want to know how you define it and potentially just would love you to just want to talk through this so we all understand it.
Yeah, so I mean, I would define it as more problem areas than anything, or say if we have a roundabout and you're adding a driveway to the middle of it, that's a significant impact, even if it's just one house. So it just gives us the leeway to look at that.
How do we qualify that in such a
Like
way
having
that
a-
someone doesn't say this is not significant and you're making it significant?
Well, I think that's where having the engineering license comes in, because you have the expertise to make that decision.
So result in significant impacts to traffic, operation, safety, and roadway capacity of adjacent streets, at the discretion of?
In the judgment of the director of
Yes.
public works or designated.
Yeah, at the judgment of, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that we should, to protect ourselves, qualify it. That's all.
Commissioner Brown?
Just getting back to my trigger section. 25.14.2, I do think we need either a C or to expand B. And it's not a catch-all. It's not us using professional expertise as traffic engineers. It's us saying, we need information. We feel we need a traffic study. One was not required by the other triggering mechanisms or by the DPW director. We feel we need it to be fully informed based on whatever idiosyncratic facts are there on the ground. Every site is different. Every traffic pattern is different. We sometimes don't find out. In fact, during the course of a public hearing, we should actually be able to require something that we need to be fully informed. I mean, you would hope that the applicant would anticipate this, but sometimes we find out, we found out in the middle of one of the hearings that everybody parks on the road. If everyone parks on the road, that could affect sightline. That could affect overflow parking that goes onto the road. It could affect safety and it could affect everything. So, we didn't know really about that until the public hearing. So I think it's very important for our commission to not give up the power it has to require the information it determines it needs. And that's what we're kind of doing here. We're not giving ourselves any authority at all to require a traffic study. So if one is not required or triggered somehow, we have no options. And we had actually a court case where the court ruled that we should have had something in our regulations if we were going to consider parked cars in a sightline analysis. And I disagreed with that, but that's what the judge said. So I don't see that in here. I think we should actually, that's a separate comment I have. I think we should have the flexibility and the authority to do a sightline analysis if parked cars are there on a frequent enough basis to have it make sense to do that.
Commissioner Levy?
I tend to disagree. I think we need to delegate to the experts to provide, to get the information, and we have to respect their judgment. by the time we get to a hearing, the time constraints are such that it's very unlikely that you'd be able to complete a traffic impact study within the required parameters of our hearing. So.
And if I could, I think many of you review the code minutes that are provided for most projects. It's an optional process that we make available to applicants, but most applicants take us up on that process. And that's where the fire department, the police department, the building department, our engineering department, health department, sewer department, everybody comes to the table to provide guidance to the applicant as to those items that they feel might need further review, might need more explanation. So, our departments that, we provide either through charter or through statute, or through state statute, for example, that we give them, or the state gives them the authority in which to review that area of concern with the project. That's where we're getting all of these comments. So I think that process has served us pretty well in terms of knowing at that time that, there might be a concern with backup on this roadway, for example, or sight lines, we'd want the driveway moved further back from an intersection. So I have found that applicants are generally pretty amenable to providing what's being requested by our professional staff people in that setting. I don't really encounter a lot of pushback. They want the applications to be as comprehensive and thorough as they can be to address any of the concerns that might come up. And in that code review, we have gotten some additional comments and feedback from the fire department, additional comments and feedback from police or engineering. And those applicants tend to want to help address those issues as they go through that process.
Randolph.
This commission considers a lot of different issues, stormwater, wetlands, traffic, structural issues, fire, life safety issues, but none of us are experts. I am a licensed professional and I do know what I don't know, and I know a lot about traffic. I hire traffic engineers, but I know I am not a traffic expert. This proposal suggests or will set a specific set of standards for our commission to receive information in a consistent manner and based upon a recognized criteria that's actually more conservative than the state's criteria. So this pushes, I think, the commission into a more informed decision-making process where we're relying on licensed, qualified professionals to prepare documents and for our staff who are licensed, qualified professionals to evaluate that information. Where we should not be weighing in are on technical matters, whether it's stormwater, whether it's wetlands, whether it's traffic, whether it's structures, whether it's fire egress systems. That is not our job. We're supposed to evaluate whether the information is sufficient, and the primary determination of what standard of information is to be provided is determined by licensed professionals. We can't ask for an over evaluation of certain things that don't have an impact. It is not reasonable and it's not constructive. So this proposal delegates the decision-making based upon an established state standard. It's a little more conservative than state standard, and it's consistent with that, and it will give us better information going forward.
Commissioner Braun.
I do agree that we are supposed to be gathering information, and that's my whole point. My whole point is we need to determine what information we need. We are the gatekeepers of information we need to be fully informed. And if there's some unique characteristic of the neighborhood or of the traffic patterns that actually take place, or if people park their cars on the road, we need to know that. And we should be entitled to get information that specifically takes that into consideration, which they don't always do. So I was also going to point out that all these standards like DOT and ITE, trip generator manual, all that, that should be the floor, not the ceiling. So that should be the minimal we have to require, but I don't really think that we should say we are preempted for making our own decisions. It seems as though this regulation says if a local traffic study that somebody commissions, I guess it wouldn't be us, it would be the DPW director commissions with an engineer, a different engineering firm. If that conflicts with DOT standards, then the DOT standards will prevail. But what if the DOT standards are lower than our standards? I would totally disagree then. If we commission an engineering firm to do a study for us, and that has higher standards or more restrictive results than what the DOT would require. And again, I'm going back to parking on the street. I know the DOT on state projects does not require anyone to consider parked cars in a sightline analysis, but we did. Bill Hurley came and testified to us at 15 Uncle Road, and he pointed out cars are always there. You should be able to consider them. It is a safety issue. We did consider it. The judge, my understanding is, said, oh, you should have put that in your regulations. So I'd like that to be in our regulations. That's just one example, okay? We should have the flexibility to get the information we need. And also, we should not restrict ourselves in this regulation to having the DOT manual or the ITE manual be the final say, because it comes down to us. We were elected to protect our town and to do proper land use. And if there's some unique characteristic that makes it not safe to follow those standards, but to put a higher level of standard down, we need to follow it. And we should not take away our own discretionary authority to do that. So I think we do have to have a couple changes in this for that. And I'm wondering what the other commissioners feel about that.
Commissioner, I think the sightline question, I think you allude to there being a standard beyond what's, currently required. And I think the difference between that, it sounds like what you're getting at is the commission establishing and codifying into our regulations some sort of standard, which sounds like maybe that's a possibility. I don't want to speak to the legality of that, but on the other piece of this, the ITE manuals and these other industry standards, we can't require more than that unless we are specific. So I think, Director.
I was just to clarify the controlling documents at the end of that section where we list all those, it's on the second page if it's you're looking at the Word document. But where we talk about the DOT versus the town standards controlling, the DOT standards would control on a state road because ultimately you're going to have to defer to them. But on the town road, it says where the local traffic study requirements conflict with CONDOT standards on local roadways, the town requirements can prevail. So we can be
if they're codified. I guess the issue is we can't treat that as a floor where no other requirements are established in our regulation. We've specifically gotten called out by that in past court decisions for trying to hold applicants to standards that aren't codified in regulations. So I think to Commissioner Braun, I think we could in theory have a higher standard than what's listed here, but you have to also list it.
I think we have to list it because if you recall 15 Uncle Road, that's exactly what the judge said. He said, and I don't even understand it because it was an 8-30G. We're not allowed to rely on our regulations to begin with. But he said, you can only use parked cars when in considering sightline analysis, because they obstruct your line of sight, if it's in your regulations, which really made no sense. Because again, 830G makes us not rely on our regulations. But we should.
I'm sorry.
We should have that in there specifically for something like that.
The issue with that though is that you can claim that the parked car issue is a matter of health or safety, which is a valid concern. But if it's not in your regulations, then the judge has said on that and others that you're then applying it inconsistently to different applicants. So because it's not in the application, we can't, in our regulations rather, if we were to hold an applicant to that standard saying that it's a health or safety concern, that would allow us to vote to reject an 830G application, we would have to apply that same standard to every other application that came before us, and I think that was the issue there.
Yeah, I think it was also, it was primarily an issue on Beach Road. And there was conflicting testimony on whether parked cars should enter into that, and also Berkeley. And frankly, yeah, you're free to propose regulation that parked cars shall be considered in all sightline determinations, and probably that would eliminate on-street parking in most of the town for any new development. So something we can consider, but that's a separate and distinct issue.
For sure.
So I'd like to just say, is this a point of order? We're discussing requirements for traffic impact studies. That's what we're discussing here. We're not really we've drifted into discussing creating new regulations for parking in the town.
I think it's a relevant question. You could, in theory, this could be an amendment to the proposed regulations, but whether or not the commission wants to do that.
So if we were to do that.
Hang on, Mr. Director.
I was just thinking about this because you mentioned including the sight lines, not just when we have a traffic impact study. So this might be a case where should we
I think this
add it
makes
in a
more
different-
sense to add this in the off-street parking and loading requirements, because that's where we talk about driveway access and egress. So I think that it makes more sense, because then you're applying that criteria to any project, like in terms of understanding, but I think to the on-street parking issue, you do have to kind of look at what's the speed limit on a road?
Mhm.
Does that allow for people to park, like, I think in any single family neighborhood that's not on one of the busier streets, we do have people who prefer to park on street instead of in their driveway. If they, if it's like a standard Residence A zone lot where it's 9,375 square feet in size, and it might not be a side-by-side driveway, and somebody doesn't want to have to move somebody else's car. So in those kinds of very slow neighborhoods, like, you don't want to over-regulate where then you inadvertently then have to take everything to the local traffic authority. So you are creating no parking zones like around driveways where it's not really necessary. So I think we have to kind of think about this carefully in terms of how we're going to apply this and when we would apply it.
Yes, and I think I would be happy doing that as well. It's just what I'm hearing is we're looking at the traffic impact study. So rather than roll it in here where you're only going to get it when it's triggered by that, I think to Emmeline's point, putting it somewhere where it's in the regs and we can look at it with any of them would make more sense.
Hang on, let me get to that, Commissioner Monahan.
I think it needs to be here because it affects these specific traffic impact studies. And if there's already parking in the street and someone wants to build something, to Jeff's point about the TIA study, and it's using the existing, we're not saying someone can't park there. We're not, it's more about what's currently there. How will this new development, be impacted as a result of that? Because in here we talk about, state highways or facilities. What is a facility? That's not defined. So you talk about when the local traffic study requirements conflict with CTOD standards, the CTOD standards shall prevail for studies involving impacts to state highways or facilities.
Wait, Commissioner Monahan, can we split it because you asked two questions and I think the
Yeah.
first one might be easily addressed. I'm not sure. Is there
I
possible?
think it should be in this section. I think when we're talking about, on-street parking being impacted as a result of the traffic study, I'm saying it should be in this section. It should not be somewhere else in a regulation. Maybe we add it there or amend something, similar, but it should be in here.
This is a traffic study section, so is it possible, does it make sense to add a more narrow item here that is focused on traffic studies that just codifies that as part of, if you're doing a traffic study, you should be doing a sightline analysis, and
That's in
then.
one of the, that's already
It's
in
in
there.
one of the, in item F.
Right,
under-
and then, so this is not a regulation regulating what to actually do in response to the findings. That would be covered in the various places, including in the section you referenced as a possible. So there is something in here that sets a requirement for looking at sightlines. And then you would have the implementation of what comes out of that
Yes.
is the relevant parts of the regulations.
It also does mention parking impacts, parking generation, on-site and off-street parking. So it does say to analyze those impacts in the traffic study.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Monahan, what was the other piece?
State facilities, I
State
believe.
facilities.
Well, it doesn't note trash on that F part either. It doesn't talk about trash pickup and delivery, which, frequently can be big problem. But you mentioned state highways or facilities. When parking traffic study requirements conflict with CT or DOT standards on local roadways, town requirements can prevail for studies involving impacts to town roadways or facilities. Can we define facilities?
So a facility would be something like a state facility could be the train station, where it's not necessarily a state highway, but it's a major, facility in the middle of the town.
Can we, so we're talking about feeder roads as well, when you talk about, what do we call those roads that are they called feeder roads that go?
Collectors?
Collector roads? So are you saying where it says impacts to town roadways or facilities, where we also talk about state highways? Are we also talking about collector roads?
Well, collector
the-
roads are a different classification than state roads.
We have both. There's town.
Right,
there's-
but in here, there's two different, the last page, D, talks about the Fairfield Traffic Authority if it's a local road, right? But then when we
Yes.
are looking at state roads, we're saying that the DOT, so it's different. So I think it needs to be qualified. What is a collector road a town road, or is it a collector road under a state highway or facilities?
We just defined this in our off-street parking and loading section, I believe. We added a definition to the back.
Collector is a term used for the type of road.
Yeah, I know, but it's not mentioned here. It just says facilities.
It doesn't necessarily mean, like, there's state and town roads that are collectors.
So again, a facilities includes what?
Highways. State highways is the standard designation for like Black Rock Turnpike. While we think of I-95 as a highway, the state roads are.
And Stilton Road is a state road. Post Road is a state road.
Yes.
But Unclewood Road is not, but there is a facility on Unclewood Road. And that's a collector road. So I'm just asking which would kick in there in terms of the collector roads, or do we need to be more specific in terms of which, we said that Fairfield Traffic Authority review should be required in one, but not in the other.
So where the traffic authority comes in would be whether or not the state or town owns the road itself. That's who's gonna govern that. And even then, the traffic authority has to see what goes on the state road too. It's just the state requirements control over whatever we say as a town. Because the state makes people submit through the traffic authority to the state for changes to their roads.
Could I just confirm that we'll be adding a requirement for traffic, and I just say TIA, traffic impact analysis?
Well, let's just be clear, because the current proposed regulation says traffic impact study. So
Yes.
if you are going to be proposing something different, that's a TIA.
In addition, so a TIA, is that recognized here in Connecticut, the TIA?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a TIA is,
Or TIAS.
yeah, it's a TIA is recognized by the designated traffic engineering group as a site-specific evaluation that looks at sightlines, turning radiuses, and site-specific options.
And what are you proposing with that?
To say we add maybe a 25, I mean, I'd leave it to Director Batista to basically come up with that, but I'm happy with what the GIS is. I think this is a great step in the right direction, but I think we might need to add a requirement for a TIA, which doesn't involve traffic. It basically doesn't involve traffic counts.
So it's a lesser,
Yes.
so it would be a lesser category.
Like a tiered approach almost, where like the lower volume
Yeah,
is
so
like a lower peak.
If we're below 100, a TIA is required to look at sight lines,
Mhm.
turning radiuses.
Got it. So it's like.
Fire department access.
Yeah.
It's a
Shorter.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like a,
it just looks at the conditions around basically exiting and entering the property.
So that would require updating 25.14.2 to indicate or trigger each, and then you would also have to update the subsequent sections to spell out what the TIA would have to include.
Yeah, so it'd be a 20, probably, you know, it'd be an amendment to this, but I think it would address a lot of the issues being raised about sightlines. You know, when do we look at them? What do we look at? 'Cause I think this is good for TIS, which was kind of a bigger problem to solve, but TIA is, because what was that 830G we did over in Southport? Remember that one? We looked at how the trucks were coming out.
Oh, the one by the,
Yeah.
Right by the highway.
Bronson Road?
Yeah. No, it was,
By the highway, right?
yeah, right by the highway.
Oh, Woodruff, 110 Woodruff.
Yeah, and because I mean, that one, there was a lot of discussion over TIA issues. It wasn't a traffic volume issue, but that was a big, it was before you were here.
yeah. I'm happy to go back and look at that.
That is
Yeah.
it's a two-step, okay.
Yeah. We'll just have to look at how we word the
Yep.
requirement.
Yeah, I think,
Commissioner Braun?
okay.
Yeah.
By 19.
In 25.14.2, section B, it seems to say significant impacts, and then it says moderate traffic generator uses. It seems like the two words conflict with each other. So basically it says, this is the one that's not the automatic trigger. This is the one that uses the discretion of the DPW director. A project that is likely to result in significant impacts to traffic operations, safety, or roadway capacity on adjacent streets, intersections, or transportation facilities. Then it says, such moderate traffic generator uses may include but not be limited to takeout, restaurants, drive-throughs, school improvements, or recreational facilities. In one place you're saying moderate, the other you're saying significant. It seems like, are you talking about two different things there?
So there's major traffic generators. That's the term the state uses. So I think that's why we use the term moderate here, because these smaller ones would not be considered a major. If the language is confusing though, I think we
Moderate could have a significant impact. A moderate generator could have a.
correct, but it doesn't qualify as a major traffic generator per state. So that's why
As defined, so
we could probably reword that.
as defined by.
And just to be clear, so a major generator doesn't have to be located on a state road. It can be located on a town local road. But if it hits a certain, if it meets that criteria, the state DOT also has to review it because it's a quote unquote major generator. So I think what engineering and our DPW director was trying to do was kind of create the next classification down from that then allowed us to kind of look at generators that weren't triggered to then go to the state, but then we could also look at based on it being a moderate generator as opposed to a major generator.
So a major generator, even on a small road that's not a state road, would require DOT review?
That's correct.
Yes.
It has to get approved by the Office of the State Traffic Administration.
But so we're saying here that moderate generator uses would also require a traffic study at the discretion of the DPW director?
That's correct.
Because it doesn't, I don't think it says that. It says, I think the sentence needs to be just revamped a little bit. The grammar
Reword it.
doesn't say that. But
Do you need moderate at all?
That's what I was saying. If it's confusing, I think we could probably just take the word.
well, I'd like to have it in there because it shows we don't have to use, so the word moderate traffic generator uses is not related to the sentence before where it says significant impacts to traffic. In other words, moderate traffic generator uses could be a lower level and not create significant impacts. Is that what you're saying here?
Just rereading it, seeing how we could rework that.
It says any application that in the judgment of the DPW or its staff is likely to result in significant impact to traffic operations, safety, or roadway capacity on adjacent streets, intersections, or facilities. So that is something that in your discretion could require a study. Then it says, oh, I guess it's just not a complete sentence. Such moderate traffic generator uses may include but not be limited to takeout, restaurants, etc. That sentence to me just needs to be perfected. You're saying that could also trigger you to make that discretionary decision.
It's confusing. I think it's confusing because it's not clear to the reader that moderate
I understand.
traffic generator is a term of art in the
That's
industry or in the
correct.
regulations or whatever. So, and maybe it's not, you said major traffic generator is a state defined.
Maybe what we do is
We
we put
could-
the state definition in
I was
first.
gonna say, we could probably tweak
Yeah.
that or move it to the center.
It looks like it's just a descriptor.
Trying to do it on the fly, but we'll
I think
that.
fix that.
I think we can reword that so it's a little more clear.
Frank and I think we understand the homework
Yes.
assignment.
I do think it would not hurt to add something here saying nothing herein shall prevent the town plan and zoning commission from requiring a traffic study if it deems it to be necessary to render a fully informed decision. And that would be our discretion. And obviously, maybe there should be a time frame on it, you know, that we have to do it on day one of the hearing. Otherwise, you're getting in trouble with timeframes. But I don't think we should ever prevent ourselves from using, we have that authority. We can do it. We can do that, and we should not prevent ourselves from using our own authority to collect information that we feel we need. It has nothing to do with overruling anyone. It's just saying we need the information. I don't think it hurts anything to add it. It doesn't overrule anything. You may require it, you may not. We may decide we need it on day one of the meeting, of the hearing.
Commissioner Monahan?
So under 2514.3 applicable standards, incorporate applicable methodologies and technical standards from the following documents. It says Americans with Disability Act standards and public right-of-way, period. And then it's accessibility guidelines, ProWAG for evaluating pedestrian and bike accommodations. Are they meant to be two different points? If so, how does the bike and pedestrian intersect with the Disabilities Act?
I don't think it needs to be two different points. They kind of cover the same thing. ProWag's really the more modern term what we follow, I believe, so. But it covers all the.
So are you saying that's in addition? So the American with Disabilities Act standards for public right of way and the bike and pedestrian are just together?
There's a straight period in there. I just realized what
Yeah.
you're looking at. There's
I think
public
so. I
right,
think you're right.
public rights of way,
Yes.
and accessibility guidelines is what the acronym ProAg stands for that, and there just shouldn't be a period
shouldn't-
after rights of way.
Yes. Between
supposed to be-
way and accessibility, that period should not be there.
Okay, so it's a comma.
So it's, yeah.
No, there's no,
No, it's
there shouldn't be a comma or a period.
Standards and public right of way accessibility guidelines for evaluating pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. Okay, what about the Americans with Disability Act standards, like for their access to the buildings? Is that something we look at?
yes, it's all encompassing for what we look at for accessibility.
Okay, so we should say in addition or including, because this way
Well,
we're looking at
it's-
it is not including just that, it's including just pedestrian and bike.
Well, the accessibility is typically for a pedestrian, but
The ProAg is part
Okay.
of the ADA.
If you-
it's part of the ADA standard.
It's inclusive.
Okay. I wanted to also ask about, just getting back to, so these studies are paid for by the developer, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're assuming that all of the data that comes in is data that we believe always to be 100% accurate, correct?
That's correct. I mean, we do check it. We have ways of checking that too, but
So my concern is when they do the studies, right? If you do a study in a certain area on a snowy week or snowy month, it's very different than other times of the year. What protections do we have, to say, like if someone does a study right now and says, I'm doing it on the Post Road or on Umpqua Road, it's going to be very different than if they do that study in peak times a year. Is there anything in this regulation that states it has to be done at at the right time of year? I mean, I don't know how to phrase that. I don't know what I don't know, right? But I do know that when you give someone a task, there's definitely different ways to spin data and to look at things that, would help them maybe pass something that shouldn't otherwise be passed.
So it doesn't specifically say that in here, but that is part of our review process. Typically, once you trigger a traffic study, the traffic engineer is doing the study is gonna reach out to the town and check all of those things, and we're gonna give them guidance on that because it fluctuates too much for different uses. To your point, beach, if you're doing something on Fairfield Beach Road per se, you don't want to do a traffic study in January, or likewise, if it's in front of a school, you don't want to do it in July or August. So that's something that's usually worked out in the process with the person doing the study.
Do we have to have something in writing to protect ourselves to make sure that that is, it's because it's very subjective.
Sometimes what you'll see with the traffic impact studies is if, sometimes the developer or the traffic engineer working for the developer can only work during the time that that application is submitted. So sometimes I've seen in traffic impact studies that they will use conservative multiplier factors. For example, if there's a project that's pending and that developer really needs to submit because for example, like the daycare facility that's pending in Southport, they did their traffic study because they have, their period of time that they have before they actually can do their due diligence before purchase is very limited. So they have to apply for all their permits within a certain period of time. The town engineer, when looking at the traffic study, can say, well, hey, this is usually very busy during a school period. I need you to add a multiplication factor to the numbers that you're using because I know that these actual physical data point counts that you did are likely lower than what the normal roadway conditions would be. And then that would be listed in the traffic impact study. Sometimes we can control when they do a traffic impact study. Sometimes we can't because it's in a due diligence period with somebody who's looking to buy a property in order to do a future development, and the prime example is that Southport daycare center. They have to do that work during that time, otherwise they walk away from the project. So, so it varies, but I have seen engineering, like traffic impact studies where they do bump up the numbers given what they're able to pull from the data. What generally, for example, if it's near a state road, the DOT has traffic counts too that they're doing. So they know during other parts of the year what those numbers should be sometimes as well.
Most times they'll ask us if we have any other recent counts as well that they can use. So it's usually something that's worked out on the front side.
So there's no true multiplier. You just are using. I mean, I recently pulled up some data and the site's now down. So I was just wondering, what some of those kind of sites look like and what the multipliers look like. So that's at your discretion to say this is inaccurate. You're not factoring in the right time of year or you're coming up with a subjective multiplier. Does that legally put us in any, harm's way?
I don't think so, because I think there's standards we can look at for that. There is some discretion versus time of year and having local knowledge too, but my experience has been when you have a traffic engineer who comes in to do the study, there's a lot of back and forth on the front side of the study to come to an agreement on a lot of these things to avoid that. So, they don't want to go redo the study either. They want to do it right the first time. So there's a lot of coordination on the front side. They typically reach out to us to see if there's any other developments they don't know about that are coming through in the area that have been approved, so they can take that into account. They typically ask us if we have any other recent data. Part of that is probably also so they don't have to count it twice, but that's, it's also doing their due diligence. So
Thank you.
there is a lot of coordination that goes in on the front side.
So a multiplier is not needed. A legal multiplier written out is not needed.
Commissioner Braun?
Just want to say, I like Commissioner Randolph's TIA proposal. It just needs to be defined what it is, and it's only an adder to this. It doesn't replace anything here, right?
I just sent them a recommendation.
Okay, I think it's good, yeah. Regarding the state, there's a lot of roads here that are state roads or dual jurisdiction or state facilities that, are you saying, Director, that we cannot exceed state DOT, I mean, go beyond state DOT requirements? It seems to me like their requirements are, if you want to go less than them, you can't. But can we go beyond that and say we want more restrictions on something?
They typically will not go beyond what their standards are. I mean, we can ask, but typically their standards control on their roads. So that's why, we worded it that way, because we also want to be in a position where we're requiring someone to do something in excess on the state road, and then the state turns around and, says it's not up to their standards, and then we're in that.
So I know there's a DOT standard saying you don't have to include parked cars, but we may want to include parked cars because cars might park on certain state roads, right? I imagine. So, the Post Road, is that a state road? North Benson, is that a state road?
Yes.
Yeah, so people park on those roads, and we might, in other roads, we might feel that we want to include parked cars. And if we do, in our analysis, in our traffic analysis, if we do, would this preclude us from doing that if it's a state road? In other words, we have to go, it conflicts with the state DOT regulate standards, so therefore we would not be allowed to consider that. It seems like that shouldn't be the case.
I'm just thinking about it. We could, but it would have to go through the traffic authority. We would have to ask them to review it. And I don't know how that works out with your application timing.
The state traffic authority, not the town
So, like,
traffic
what-
authority.
because I know you have,
That might happen. So
You
my
have certain
recollection is
timing.
when we did the Circle Hotel, there was the possibility that it might trigger a state review, but that would have had to have happened after, right?
Correct.
So if I'm guessing that it would be similar in other applications that,
Outside agency review.
yeah, and that would have to be after the fact. And then if the state review found something and it required, it would have to just come back to us, but it would still have to take place after because of the timing issue. That sound right?
I believe so.
So there's no prohibition against us requiring, and I was gonna say, let's add a section P to 25-14-4. It ends with O, which coincidentally talks about site distance shall meet DOT standards. Can we add a P saying, as required by the Town Plan and Zoning Commission, parked cars may be required to be considered in that analysis. It may be appropriate. We may determine that's appropriate. Because again, we had Bill Hurley come to us and say, yes, you should consider it here. The cars are always there. And it's not residential, it's commercial on Sanford Street. And it would be residential that would be impacting it, because that development, they admitted there would be overflow parking. There was not enough parking off the street. So that was a huge concern. And that was one of the reasons we turned that down. And that was what the judge said. So I'm trying to find a way to add that to this regulation, that we should be allowed to require consideration of parked cars if it's appropriate.
I think you have to have a standard.
My only concern is it hasn't happened to me here, but it's happened in other municipalities where if we required a change on a state road as part of an approval, and then when you go to the state, if they don't approve it, that could create some issues. Because the applicant doesn't have control over that, because once you have to submit it to the state, it would be the local traffic authority.
And what if the local traffic authority, they have an issue with removing on-street parking? So,
It could fail at both those
Yeah.
levels.
I'm just
Like, I don't disagree with you. I'm all for like
I'm
site.
just saying, do the analysis. I'm not saying deny
Trying to figure out how.
the application. I'm saying collect the information.
which I
Would
think
the state prevent us from seeking that information so we can make an informed decision? Are we allowed to have that discretion to collect the information, even if it's on a state road? It seems to me that's a good question. Perhaps you could get back to us on that. But I have another follow-up as well.
Second, Commissioner Braun, let me just get
Oh,
to.
sorry. Yeah.
On this, go ahead, Commissioner.
Me?
Commissioner Zaplock.
Oh,
Thank you very much. While we're on the subject of parked cars, I have to tell you that is in the traffic study and taking that into account, that's near and dear to my heart. I live on a street where people park up and down the street, and sometimes when I get out of my driveway, I've got to go into traffic. And it could be very dangerous for me. And so I'm thinking, yeah, on a purely selfish standpoint, but then again, selfish for the residents in the town. The traffic study to include the parked cars, absolutely, that has to be in there. Commissioner Braun, thank you so much for bringing that up. We really need that. I just had to say my piece, had to do it. Thank you.
Commissioner
So,
Randolph.
so I think we're circling the same issue. The concern is if we start writing the ordinance here, we'll not get it right. But what I wrote and sent it to you two guys right now is requirements for transportation impact assessment. I'll read it slowly because it's a little thick. A transportation impact assessment may be required for any application that does not require a traffic impact study, and that in the judgment of the Director of Public Works or designated staff requires a focused evaluation of A, traffic operations or safety of a proposed or existing site access, or B, potential effects of traffic operations, circulation, queuing, available sightline distance, turning movement, or pedestrian and bicycle activity in a proposed or existing site access or immediate adjacent intersection. The TIA shall generally be limited to the proposed site access points and the immediately adjacent intersections applicable. The Director of Public Works or designated staff may waive the TIA. The application is anticipated to have negligible effect. So basically, it's what I'm suggesting here is we have this TIS light that looks at, and I've got experience with this stuff. It looks at the specific site conditions, not so much the traffic volume, which would take into account parked cars, turning radiuses, sight lines, and the one thing that I think we're also circling around is engineering discretion. We should not have the discretion, but the engineers are trained to have engineering discretion and make judgments on these things. So I think that the TIA may address this, and I sent it to Emmeline and to Frank here, so we can perhaps, I think this addresses a lot of the questions being raised.
Yes, I think the one thing I'm just trying to figure out is how to word it on a state road. Like, I don't think there's any issue with us collecting the data on state road. We can always do that. It's just how we write in the requirement. If we're gonna make any changes on the state road, that's where it gets
That's
a little tricky
go
to,
through.
it has to go through the state. So that's where,
CT dot.
Is it possible to do it where any changes made to state roads would just have to be made as a request to the state? And then ultimately it would be at their discretion, and that would have to be done as part of their review process, which, as we've seen in some of the projects where this has come up, it would likely be done after project approval, but before project would be built, because obviously the project's not gonna get built until that the state does that analysis and weighs in. In that case, if we made a recommendation about a change to a state road, that would be part of that. They would weigh in on that.
Subject to.
so you would have, yeah. I think we collect the data and then make suggestions, and if it impacts a state road, we would have to say, subject to the approval of.
Subject to, yeah.
Which I think is what
Department
we
of
did. I
Transportation.
don't remember for sure, but I believe on the Circle Hotel 830G proposal, I feel like I recall that there was a recommendation that was subject to state review.
We recommended to move the driveway
Right.
to align with the
Doug
Grand
Handel
intersection.
project,
Yeah, yeah.
Commissioner Braun?
okay, I have another jurisdictional question. So the one we just talked about related to the DOT, and I think that's great to do that research. Number D, which is the very last item of 25.14.5, it's the section called review and acceptance. So the study will be reviewed by the engineering department at the discretion of engineering. They might hire another consultant. And if the development could impact a state highway or facility, which is what we're talking about now, the town may require it to be sent to the DOT for separate review and approval. That doesn't change anything we were just talking about in terms of we might ask them to do something that the state doesn't ask them to do. That this is separate. This is review and acceptance. That was collecting information, what we were just talking about, right?
That's correct.
Okay, then item D does not relate to the state. It seems to relate to a local authority called the Fairfield Traffic Authority. It says, should a traffic impact study for a development proposal result in modification to any right-of-way, sign signals, pavement markings, traffic calming, or other modifications to local or state roadways, the Fairfield Traffic Authority review shall be required. So my concern is this, where our commission approves a project and we cannot be superseded on, you know, those toilet plunger sticks that are all over the place. That should not affect what we do. We are the ones that decide what gets approved, and we cannot be overruled by another town agency, can we? I
Yes,
mean,
you
even engineering.
you
cannot
don't
be
have
overruled.
jurisdiction.
On the road, yes.
Yes.
That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
The road is
don't have
governed by the local
jurisdiction.
traffic authority, so.
No,
It
the
is.
traffic authority can say you can't do this project because those sticks sticking up might be affected.
They could say we can't.
So let me.
We make our determination. They can't overrule us.
Well, no, but for example, if in some sort of application, the town, it's at an intersection and the town says, we'd like the applicant to build a pedestrian bump out. And then it goes to the local traffic authority, and for whatever reason, the local traffic authority says, and not to be at the cost of the town, but the cost of the developer, the local traffic authority looks at it and says, well, it's not really consistent with the standards that apply to this type of intersection, then the local traffic authority might recommend a revision to that. So again, it's about area of jurisdiction.
I guess when there's a wetlands issue, our regulations require that they apply for a wetlands permit, and whether it's approved or denied, they have to apply for that before they come to us. So, but now this is kind of the reverse. We could approve something that could affect something the traffic authority does, and they could overrule us. And then what happens then?
I think they could only overrule us on the impact to the, if an applicant came to us and said as part of their project, they in a way would not be our decision to make.
I just don't think this section D should be in here because it looks as though they could supersede what we do.
They can, that is their right per the charter
In the roadway.
in the
So
roadway,
that would change the zoning permit that we provide the conditions of approval.
only in the public right of way. Because that's their jurisdiction.
So what does
But
the
it
charter
would not-
state exactly?
Pardon?
What does the charter state exactly on that topic?
Is the traffic authority the charter? I doubt it. It's probably done by code, by the ordinance.
I think it's done by
She said that,
ordinance.
she just said that it's in the charter.
It must be in the
It's
code. I don't
It's
think
also
so.
the state.
Yeah,
in
it's
the
state,
State general,
it's in state statutes as
it's in
well.
state statutes that have the local traffic authority.
Oh, because they took over for the police commission, which used to run this show? Yeah, okay.
Well, the wording in the state law is local traffic authority. And then there's different entities that are allowed to be that local traffic authority.
Including, when you say different entities, which entities?
Like a police commission, a board of selectmen, a local traffic authority. So those things are all qualified to be the local traffic authority for a municipality.
So should we add
In our
police
case,
commission?
it's the traffic authority now.
Should police commission be added to this review?
No.
No, because they're no longer
Changed
the
by
local
ordinance.
traffic authority.
I'd like to read that ordinance if, what, can you direct me to it?
I can send
Sure,
you a link.
yeah.
Great. I have a few more questions.
Go ahead.
So item under 2514-4, site distance for access shall meet CTDOT and engineering standards with minimum distances required based on 85%. It looks like someone put in 85% speed. Most projects will be required to conduct actual traveling speed analysis and studies. Can you explain to me where the 85% comes in as, you know, it relates to 100 or 50? Where like, or 75, where does 85 come in? And is that on all roadways?
So yeah, the 85th percentile speed is what's commonly the industry standard when analyzing that site distance.
And is that on main roads or is it on side streets or is it, you know,
Anywhere.
Anywhere, any road.
any road?
Percent of the
It's the
Observed speed.
yeah, it's the observed speed on the road.
So even if it's marked at 25, but people are commonly driving 40 miles an hour at 85 percentile,
Not anymore.
that's where your sight lines become longer because of the increased speed.
So you need to account for those vehicles being able to stop.
Okay, so at 85% of the speed of that on that road. Okay.
Traffic engineering 201 here.
There is a typo there too. It should be 85th.
Commissioner Zablock?
We have 85%. It should be a little TH after the.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Hey, I have to move to, I want to move to continue the public hearing on 2514, the next TPC meeting, because we've got to allow the staff to bring back a revised draft.
Oh, yeah.
And that's got to incorporate 19 substantive improvements this commission has identified tonight.
Yeah, we
will-
will do that. Yeah, I know this needs some revision / drafting of additional language based on the comments today, and we haven't gone to public comment yet, which we'll also need to do.
Yeah, I'm making a motion for that.
No motion needed. I don't, unless anyone opposes it.
No.
Motion to hold open the public hearing. I think that's a good idea, especially if you significantly.
No motion is needed because that's what we're gonna do. Unless
Pardon me?
someone-
Yes.
there's no motion needed. I don't think anyone objects to it.
Good.
Commissioner Monahan.
So C, under 2514-4, trip distribution and assignment to the existing network. Can you please qualify that?
So that's the existing network. We could add the word roadway. It's the existing roadway network. So the trip distribution is if you have more than one, typically more than one. Well, it could be either. It's how you propose the vehicles are going to be entering in and out of the site. You know, it's a little easier to explain if it's multiple access points. You know, there's a southerly access point where you're expecting all the vehicles to go south on the post road, and the northerly access, you're looking at most of the vehicles going northbound. It's just the way you analyze the impacts to the roadway. You know, as opposed to like I said, if you have multiple access points, you know, are you assuming 75% of the trips go out one and 25 out of the other? So we look at things like that.
So just adding the word roadway would suffice there, right? And then the safety analysis, including crash history for preceding 3 years at the intersection. Why is it 3 years?
That's also industry standard. It's typically a 3-year look back, just with the changes in roadway networks, developments, and traffic patterns over time.
Do we want to go back to 5 years or?
Minimum.
So it's 3-year minimum.
Safety, including a crash history for the preceding 3 years at the impacted intersections, doesn't say minimum. Under age?
Which, where are you?
Age 2514-4, minimum requirements up top. Okay. So preceding minimum is at top. Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Braun.
I just want to point out 2 more things. When we're talking about, again, the triggering mechanism, it doesn't mention residential. Is there a reason for that where it says moderate traffic generator uses? Like, for example, residential, is this saying that residential would not trigger it unless it generates 100 or more peak trips?
It's any development, residential, commercial, industrial.
That's if it reaches 100 trips. That's automatic trigger. But for the discretionary trigger, it mentions only significant impacts or moderate, and under moderate it lists different things like restaurants. For some reason, apartment buildings are not mentioned there, but we know that should that be listed there, or is that something that you would consider significant impact, or does it depend on the size of the building?
It depends on the size of the building and where it is.
And I just wanted to point out one thing about the code review. Code review is completely voluntary. They don't look at final plans necessarily. And there's no, the code review could have taken place 3 years earlier on 2 versions of the plan ago. So it's very good to have, and I really appreciate getting all the departments together to sort of review a preliminary concept. Usually, sometimes it's the final concept of a site plan before it comes to us. And I read those. We don't always get them, and they don't always do them. So can't really rely on that as a way of solving or answering our questions about cars parking on the street. So
Commissioner Randolph.
These conversations spark different questions. So we don't have anything here about the age of the TIS. Shouldn't we say has to have been conducted within a certain amount of time? Because I know TISs expire. Was it 2 years? 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, we can add something in there about that.
TIS is
Take back and look at.
When an applicant resubmits years later. Yeah.
If the project's delayed, we want to make sure they're redoing it, yeah. Okay,
But that might,
think we can-
CT dot might cover that. But,
we'll take a look at that.
yeah, just
It's a good catch.
because Kathy was, Commissioner Braun was talking about.
Some level of traffic review, even if,
TIA though.
you know,
With it.
I mean, I think,
That's
yeah, I mean,
pertains to
you would
safety.
still, I
TIA.
think you would still, I mean, again, I think the assumption is that, and again, in Fairfield, the market needs for multifamily have required developers to provide parking, even when not mandated by 830G. I suspect, although we will have to wait and see, whether developers who are proposing 16 units or less are going to choose to waive, to not provide parking because we can't mandate it as a town. I suspect in most circumstances, because again, this applies to everything from single-family homes to up to 16-unit developments, that most people are going to choose, because the market demands it, to build parking as part of that. So I think when we look at traffic analysis, we should still include that in some way if Public Works and Engineering thinks that that's something that we should really look at because of anticipated impacts to our roadways.
So I'm just thinking that we can always, even in a 16-unit or less development, even if that's summary review only, meaning we cannot impose any discretionary conditions. There's nothing wrong with us requiring a traffic study though, is there? Because that relates to safety. And even though part of the traffic study has to do with parking, it's not really it has to do with parking, and parking could relate to safety. I guess that's a very interesting question to think about for next time.
But it also,
It's an access point. So
Yeah.
if we
It's the
require
X, yeah.
TIA, that involves evaluating how the movement of vehicles goes in and out. So we would be justified in I'm pretty sure we'd be justified in requesting a TIA for 16 units or less.
Yes.
Commissioner Monahan.
it also pertains to construction and demolition, which, when we see the Umpqua Road project, happen, there's a lot of concern about roadways being closed, infrastructure being, changed for, everything that has to happen with that building in terms of, hooking him to utilities and the like, schools, construction vehicles, traffic to the train station, et cetera. So, I think it's important that we do have some sort of analysis on how it pertains to traffic and, before something is agreed to.
Director Patisse, on that note, there is an item under minimum requirements for the study that talks about impacts during construction. It mentions construction vehicle access and then just generally impacts to adjacent streets. Is there in the ITE trip gen manual, does that speak to construction vehicle trip generation? Because I feel like we haven't gotten that consistently, but there have been a couple of projects where I'm thinking maybe 4480 Black Rock, where there was a specific number of trips estimated for construction vehicles specifically. That was a pretty high number, but I don't remember getting
know
that
that it's-
consistently.
I don't know that it's in the IT trip gen manual.
Are you aware
Con-
of
con-
a
con-
way?
Construction traffic's usually very low volume. The issues are typically
Fill
access. It's access because they're heavy
Parking
vehicles.
too.
I think there was a lot of bedrock there that needs to be transported up. So I don't know. My question was really, is there a standard for construction vehicle trip gen that could be applied, or is that sort of?
I think we can get that within our excavation and fill
It varies.
standards.
It really varies on depending on how much they're digging.
So it's not a formula like.
Not really.
for Other.
We do have, under letter G, the applicants shall submit maintenance, protection and traffic plans and include MUTCD plans, please detail sidewalk accessibility and pedestrian safety plans. That's really during construction, so maybe we can add just during construction there, just to clarify that as well.
The volume usually isn't an issue, right? It's the temporary road that goes in, it's the turning radius, it's the size of the vehicles.
It's the volume of the larger vehicles that, not necessarily like the number of smaller trucks going, but you have large trucks hauling material. That's where the volume of those trucks, how many of those are coming and going, and how they're accessing it.
Outliers, if there are circumstances like there's a lot of bedrock that needs to be or fill that needs to be.
Or how deep the foundations go.
In the city, they've got like a really strict basically logistics plan that has to get submitted to the city typically, because it's so tight and they're huge vehicles usually, so. But we haven't had projects of that size.
No.
Typically, so. Like
We
it's
know.
Stanford, probably.
We did, yeah, in Stanford, we required that. Yes.
Commissioner Monahan?
So if we, someone comes to us, brings us a traffic impact study and a TIAS, and the plan gets approved, and just like some of these 830G developments, the developer may not build them. The developer may hold the project and then choose some years down the road to sell it to someone else. In the meantime, 2 or 3 other buildings are built. Does that first applicant have to come back in order as a condition of approval within a certain period of time and do another study? So
That's what Commissioner Randolph suggested adding was an expiration date essentially for this.
Okay.
So,
But I would caution that right now with state statute, if your application has a timeline attached to it in terms of the approval, I don't know that we can conflict with state law.
right, we could just tie it to an
So it would
existing
have to be tied
standard.
to, yeah.
If their application expires,
have to
so does the
double-check that.
traffic study, and then
But I think,
their approval, not application, sorry.
is it 3 years in Connecticut?
No, I think it depends. I think it
No,
goes
it's-
on.
It's GIS.
I don't know off the top of my head. I want to check that.
3
could you
years,
let us know what that is?
there is a number though.
Yes.
They expire because you get additional
It's-
background growth.
3 years is typically, like, when you look back at volumes and crashes, it's usually that 3-year window.
It's 9:52. Any final, we're obviously gonna keep this open. How long, I don't wanna put you on the spot, but is this a next meeting item? Do we need a couple of meetings for you to draft the new language and make the revisions?
Tuesday.
You wanna get back to us on
Okay.
that?
So we can we schedule this for our next planning session, which is at the beginning of August, which I believe is August 4th? Does that give you enough time? Are you going on vacation?
And then can, those of us who have suggestions, perhaps we could reduce them to writing to make it, to sort of, there's a lot of suggestions we all came up with, and I have a lot, and other commissioners have a lot. Perhaps we can each submit them and.
Yeah, I mean, I think at minimum, we have the transcript, but yeah, I'm sure it would help, Ms. Harrigan, if if you have
Saying,
4th, 11th. or
specific comments.
So you'll use the transcript in addition to comments or comments?
I think the transcript's probably going to be a little tougher to navigate because it's not just a bullet list of recommendations, so.
But I've been taking pretty comprehensive
Yeah.
notes. I think,
Yeah, that you have
I think
the
so,
transcript as a backup, you have your notes,
Yeah.
but, do you,
I may be able to do the 4th, the 11th, I'm away.
okay,
I think we probably have competing provisions that we want in there, but we should probably all submit them for discussion. And then so the hearing is continuing. We're not voting next time. We'll be public hearing with, would you then incorporate all the suggestions, even if we don't have consensus on all of them? Like straw man items, so we can discuss them?
I guess, without knowing how many conflicting provisions there are or ones that there isn't consensus on, maybe do you want to just start
Well, I would-
working on it and then
I
see?
mean, I'm gonna rely on Frank to let me know whether any of the suggestions may conflict with
Mhm.
DOT standards or what we're allowed to do within FTA allowance.
Yeah.
So, I think as we go through the list, I think we have good direction from the commission as to kind of a more tiered approach to make sure that we are encompassing general sightline issues for every application, that we have kind of this tiered approach to what our engineering department is looking at when projects come before the commission. And I've taken pretty copious notes in terms of some of the comments that the commission has. I'll re-listen to the video and we'll create a list
will
from
as well.
there to make sure that we get everything incorporated. Obviously, the public hearing's still open, so based on that revised draft, which will date, and I guess we can do a separate red line for
You might be
those
correct.
changes that we
There's anything major that was suggested to be removed, so maybe
we'll just
edits
redline
can
it.
be inline edits that are redlined, and then
Okay.
maybe new additions could be a separate doc, so we just to keep things a little clear.
I did send you the TIA language.
Okay,
Could we also date the document,
yes,
today's date? And then,
great. Yep,
I think the edits are there's probably gonna be a lot of alignment on the additions, maybe where there could be some divergence, so having that as a separate document, I think it avoids some confusion of what's their consensus on, do we need to actually discuss?
okay. Yep,
Just the only suggestion that I do not agree with is the commission unilaterally asking for items that are not consistent with any of the recognized provisions. I think that we need to rely on standards for a couple of reasons. One, to give applicants direction. The other is to give our staff direction. And the third is to keep us from making arbitrary requirements that could potentially ultimately be overturned.
It's not arbitrary to request information we need to make a fully informed decision. In fact, that's what the judge said we should have done.
I think this is gonna be a list, there doesn't have to be consensus, so let's include it, we can discuss it and people can come out where they want on it. Okay, everything, any questions from you, director or director?
Thank you for
On the-
coming.
On the, is there a certain amount of time that the public hearing has to stay open, or you have to?
not for,
Our items,
not for
though.
commission-led
Okay.
items.
Right. I'm just, if something happens where we don't hit that August 4th date, I just want to make sure we're not jeopardizing anything. Okay.
We just have a bunch of stuff on the queue to get through, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right, so we'll hold this public hearing open to our August 4th meeting. And it being 9:57, we'll adjourn for this evening, but thank you everyone for the good discussion.
great.